Hi, everyone, and welcome back. This is the Canuckleheads show, starring yours truly, Frankie, here at New West Reset. And as always, I'm joined by my wacky partner in crime, Old World Exploration. How you doing, all?
Pretty good. I'm weird and I'm wacky.
That's right. That's the best way to be.
Right? I agree.
Spring is in the air up here in Canada, finally, after our cabin fever of extended winters. So being weird and wacky is, well, it's definitely understandable. So how you doing? How's everything going?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. I'm deep in my research and enjoying fishing around and pulling out the evidence of the old world. I'm excited for this chat today. Didn't know much about that side of the country, so getting a little info on that will be exciting and enlightening.
Yeah, and just a reminder for everybody, I myself, I'm in southwestern Alberta, just at the eastern slopes of the Canadian Rockies, where the Rockies sort of meets the foothills and turns into the prairies. And then you're right in the heart of the Rockies in British Columbia there. So we're
Yeah,
talking about St. John's, Newfoundland, which is the opposite end of the country.
yeah, a ways away for sure. It'd be a heck of a trip to make our way out there. Out there.
Yeah, it's about between 3,000 and 4,000 miles away from roughly where you and I are, out to the east coast there. St. John's, Newfoundland is what we're talking about here today. And we've already got a couple of people joining us. Justin Howard is here. He says, Nelson, BC, Canucklehead here. Sunny Kim is here. Good morning. And Kathy Childers, hello from Kentucky. Well, howdy.
Hey, Kathy.
So, I think what we'll do here is, as per usual, here on the Canucklehead Show, we've got some great photos between myself and O to share with all of you. And going to explore the narrative a little bit and how hinky and wacky that is, of course, as they tend to be in our type of research. And as well, I've got a little bit of a video footage as well, about a 3-minute video clip, old home movies taken, sort of street scenes of St. John's from the 1920s. So that'll be really, really interesting to check out as well. So hope
All right, let's
everybody's
go.
doing good and had a great weekend. How was your weekend? And you had some time off too, didn't you?
Yeah. I have a bit of time to spend on this research rather than my 9 to 5. So it's trying to get ready to get the old trailer ready for getting out to the lake with the kids for the summer too. Just bought myself a pop-up trailer, a tent trailer, whatever you want to call it, and yeah, souping that up for a little outdoor adventure in the
Oh,
summer.
that'll be great. That'll be great. And I'm just can well imagine the amount of campgrounds and provincial parks that are in and around where you are. I mean, you're again right in the Rockies, so that's just a beautiful, beautiful way to spend long weekends through the summer here in Canada.
Sure is, yeah.
So it's like one of those hardtop tent trailers that you just kind of put the crank on. You crank it up, and the roof pops up, and then you just pull out the beds, and you're good to go, basically, right?
You bet. Yeah, that's it.
Those things are great because even if you're a one-man show, you can set one of those up in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's nice, and it's really nice to haul something small rather than a large trailer in the back.
That's kind of how I like to go camping too. Is I tend not to have a lot of the big, huge, fancy tech stuff. I mean, my parents are like that because I mean they're older now, so they don't want to be sleeping on an air mattress and a sleeping bag in a tent or something like that. So they've got the big, ridiculous 40-foot fifth wheel travel trailer or camper or caravan, whatever you want to call it, with all the pull-out living room, and they've got a microwave and a satellite dish and all that crazy stuff in there. But I still tend to do the tent and cook over the open fire thing. It's kind of, I don't know. I enjoy being a little closer to nature in that respect.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear what you're saying for sure. I can relate to that. I used to work out of a tent many years ago when I planted trees up here, but so the tents kind of ruined it for me for camping. So the tent trailer will be a nice upgrade for me.
Oh yeah, that's a lap of luxury for you after sleeping in tents, tree planting out in the middle of nowhere in the bush. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting lifestyle and something to get into maybe at another time. Some interesting stories with that industry.
I've known a few people that have done tree planting over the years, and Some of them hated it, but some of them really loved it. I guess if you're kind of an outdoorsy guy and you're a little bit of a, I don't know, I guess a loner per se, or you're comfortable, you know, in your own skin and spending time, extended periods of time by yourself, then it's not such a big deal.
Yeah, you get a lot of opportunity to sort out the internal dialogue out there. You really learn how to settle your mind. I think it's good for that. It's good for me.
Yeah, I can well imagine. I can well imagine.
Yeah, I have a few memories of being out in at the end of the logging road, looking out into the valley that had been untouched, and yeah, just pristine moments that I have fond memories of. But there weren't too many times when I got to the end of the road, end of the logging road, where but there were a few, and it was really amazing country.
I bet you saw a lot of wildlife out there too, you know?
Oh yeah, you get pretty used to a lot of that. I remember planting around a bear, and then
Yeah,
getting
bears.
getting almost comfortable with walking around bears. As long as you don't mess with them, they won't mess with you, kind of attitude. Yeah.
Yeah, bears can be a challenge because they're very unpredictable. And a lot of it is uh, sort of depends on the time of the year, right? Like if they're coming right out of hibernation, they're so hungry, they just got to like try to consume and store up as much calories as they can coming out of hibernation. So they'll eat just about anything.
Yeah, but they don't have a lot of energy in at that time of year too, so they're not less likely to get in a conflict. I think the fall would be more where they're feeling strong and they want to fatten up,
Yes,
and,
yeah.
and they're more likely to push in some cases. But I never had any negative experience that as far as that goes with bears. They were always just doing their thing, and we were just doing ours for the most part.
Yeah, I think with as it is with sort of most wild animals in nature, if you give them a wide berth and if they're doing their own thing and you don't interrupt whatever they're doing, generally speaking, you're okay. But of course, once they have their babies around, that's a whole different story.
Oh yeah,
You pretty much want to clear out, especially bears and mountain lions. You don't want to be anywhere near them.
no, the mama bears are the were the ones that you had to really respect the space and get the heck out of there when their babies were around.
Yeah,
There's no you
absolutely.
don't mess around with that. The mama bear.
But the most terrifying Canadian wild animal of all, when they have their babies around, is the Canada goose. Man, those things will take on anything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've seen YouTube videos of Canada geese going after a bull moose because the bull moose got too close to the nest where the female goose was had her clutch of goslings, and the male and female both attacked this moose, and that moose got the hell out of there.
Wow.
And a moose is 1,200 pounds. They're bigger than a horse.
Well, I was going to say some of the more nervous encounters I've had in the wilderness have to do with moose more so than bears. They're huge.
Yeah, they are
Yeah.
very intimidating.
Yeah.
But those Canada geese, look out, man. I mean, here in Calgary, that's how I know spring has officially arrived, is when the Canada geese are in all the city parks and along the river, and they'll just stand or sit right in the middle of the bike path or a sidewalk, and if you don't sort of cross the street or again give them a wide berth, they'll attack you, man. There's a reason why they're known as cobra chickens or murder turkeys, because they're pretty aggressive.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. So what do you say we get this thing rolling here with St. John's, Newfoundland?
Let's do it.
The narrative on this, for those of you that aren't aware out there, is it's Canada's oldest city, and it's pretty much Canada's easternmost significant town or city. There's small little fishing villages, I think, that are a little bit further east, but in terms of anything of any significant size or population, St. John's, Newfoundland is the furthest east. And we were talking earlier how close it is to, and how it became probably not probably by the official narrative, but also by the hidden history, probably was a main stopover from ocean and seafaring vessels coming from Europe, most especially Ireland. Ireland to Newfoundland is closer than you are to Newfoundland.
Yeah, it's a ways away for sure. Yeah, so I'm interested to get into some of this, and I don't really know much about the area other than the stereotypes that we get, surrounding Newfies and fun-loving people. As my experience of Newfies, really enjoy the people who come from that region of Canada.
Yeah, and Newfoundland is a beautiful part of the country. The people there are the friendliest, most salt of the earth, down to earth people. Um, like you could be best friends with a Newfie after meeting them for 5 minutes. They're just such great people. They have that lust for life, that zest for life, which is strange because that we were talking before we went live, the narrative of Newfoundland, most especially, but well, St. John's maybe because it's a big city, it's not too bad, but overall area of Newfoundland, the narrative is it's very downtrodden. It's one of the poorest regions of the country. It relies very heavily on the fishing industry, which has had over the decades more and more restrictions put on it. And, as a result, a lot of the fishermen there during the fishing season, they work hard and they work long days, long weeks, 6, 7 days a week, sun up to sundown. But then during the winter, and I'm not exactly sure officially what sort of fishing season is and when they can and can't fish, but apparently for a great part of the year, the fishing is not permitted. Obviously, they don't want to overfish. So they end up having to go on unemployment or get, a second job. So the economy is sort of on the precipice of collapsing at any given point out there in Newfoundland. So the narrative is that they're very poor, downtrodden people, but you'd never know it when you meet a Newfoundlander. They're so happy and friendly.
Well, that's that Irish culture, transplanted. I think culture is very important to keep the mood up. I think.
Yes,
They're good at that.
absolutely. Yeah, there's such a strong Irish heritage, well, UK in general, but Irish most especially, that, you could see how, just in the Irish history, there's been, again, a lot of, let's just say they've been really held down, right? And there's been a lot of uh, the history, not his story, but the true history of Ireland has been suppressed and hidden. And a lot of that carries over into Newfoundland, I think. Because if you hear the Newfie accent, it's very reminiscent of the UK, most especially, again, the Irish accent.
Yeah.
It's much different than accents in any other region in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you have French Canada has a distinct accent that's got a little bit of a French sort of a tinge to it. And then depending where else you are in Canada, it kind of differs slightly. But that Newfie accent is very distinct and it's very reminiscent of Irish.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that is because, for those that don't know, Newfoundland didn't join Canada until after World War II. So it was, I believe, in 1949 officially when they joined Confederation, as we call it, right? The union up here in Canada, the Confederation of Canadian Provinces. So they're the latest.
So ironically, the oldest and the newest, right? It's kind of interesting.
That's right. I never thought of it that way because, Newfoundland is the newest province to join, but St. John's, Newfoundland, the capital city there, is, for most of the sources that I've been able to find, is generally accepted to be the oldest city in Canada and one of the oldest in North America. In fact, some sources cite it as the oldest in North America.
Yeah. You should show me some visuals. Let's get it started, and we can use that as a backdrop.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Just want to say hi to Nance as well, and there's my old friend Joe, Billy Philly.
Billy, hello.
So yeah, I've got. I managed to find a few photos here for St. John's, some nice old world photos, and most of the ones that I found were between 1892. Well, actually, no, sorry, scratch that. Late 1880s up until the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be a hodgepodge of beautiful old world buildings, some churches and some street scenes and, schools and whatnot. But I thought maybe before we did that, we would give folks an idea of what St. John's looks like today. Because it's, again, there's a narrative that has to do with St. John's that, well, we'll let you know what, picture speaks 1,000 words. So we'll let these photos kind of speak for themselves here.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for joining us this morning here, guys, in the chat, and feel free to hop in on the conversation anytime. That's what it's all about, right? Putting the heads together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we decided to kind of switch to doing this Canucklehead show live, is because in talking kind of behind the scenes over the past couple of weeks, we both really like the interaction in the chat, and you know, this being live, you know, we get to talk to you and get your feedback, and we could sort of bounce ideas off each other in real time. So, you know, it's this is the best way to do it, and it's just a great way to kind of interact with everybody. So here you can see what we're talking about, how beautiful the houses look in St. John's. The bright colors, the pinks, the yellows, orange, blue, I mean, you name it, every color under the sun is represented in these beautiful old sort of colonial style homes.
Yeah, the mansard roof with the gables popping out the front. That's really pretty.
Yeah. Yeah. And really steep pitches to the roofs, you'll notice in a lot of not only residential homes, but a lot of the large old world buildings. Because this part of the country, I mean, you think Canada in general is known for snow. This part of the country gets so much snow. They get those nor'easters, right? The northeastern winds that blow in from the Arctic, and these guys will get 6-8 feet of snow in a snowstorm, you know, in a matter of a couple of days, and that's no joke.
That's heavy snow. That's coastal snow as well, right? So that's
Yeah,
not
it's that wet, heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But here, even along sort of the main drag, just to the left of this photo here is basically the piers and the Atlantic Ocean. You could just see, I mean, this is a touristy area, you know, with pubs and restaurants, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful city. Some wood frame homes and buildings, and then some obviously old world stone and brick structures.
Interesting construction for sure. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're going to see a lot of this today as well in the stream. A lot of these sloping streets. But just look how absolutely beautiful that is to the eye. Like, it's just so appealing. No wonder the people here are happy and friendly and have that joie de vivre, you know, that lust for life. Just beautiful. But it certainly didn't look like that in the past, did it, oh?
Well, let's have a look.
Because it was some of the photos that I found, man. Whew. And I know we'll have a look at a bunch that you found as well, but man, oh man, tells a different story back in the day, you know, tells a completely different story back in the day. Like, for example, I've got this beautiful street scene here.
Look at that, hey? Real car.
This is from the late 1880s, a pre-automobile.
You know what? If you zoom, I think we're looking at some brick on the roads.
I know in my research there were at least 2 streets in St. John around this time. St. John's, sorry, I have to.
Yes.
That's another thing, is that there's St. John's, Newfoundland, and then there's St. John,
New Brunswick.
New Brunswick. That's right.
Yeah. I always confused those in the school growing up. I always confused those two. That was difficult.
Well, and in finding old photos too, there was it got to be confusing, because it would be very easily mislabeled St. John's. So, you know,
we have a Nancy in the chat asking where this is located. Do you maybe pull up a map if you don't mind? I don't know, just so people have an idea where this is.
That's a good idea. Yeah, it's a good idea. Let's do that first here.
You get a real sense of how remote this place is too with the map.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, a lot of people are pretty aware of how big Canada is, but just to see in relation to seeing where Newfoundland and St. John's is in relation to the rest of the country. You're right. Let me just share this. Here we go. So as you can see, here's North America. So Old World exploration is in this area. I'm down here in Calgary. So we go through the prairies, through Ontario, through Quebec. And if you follow the St. Lawrence Seaway here, out into the Gulf of the St. Lawrence, you get to right here. This is Newfoundland. And it's weird too, because the Trans-Canada Highway traverses parts of Newfoundland. So they actually had to put a ferry in as part of the Trans-Canada Highway. But anyway, you can see St. John's is right here. It's pretty much the biggest city, the furthest east here in Canada. And then we have Labrador here. So Newfoundland is actually Newfoundland and Labrador. Newfoundland, I believe, is a province. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Newfoundland is a province and Labrador is a territory.
I don't know if I have the correct answer for that.
Much like the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut are territories, not provinces.
Also, notice how it's Newfoundland, right?
That's right. We pronounce it Newfoundland. Newfoundland. But it's actually Newfoundland. Yes, absolutely.
Found dead, maybe.
So a little bit of occulted honesty there with the narrative. But you can see here from St. John's, right here, Newfoundland, to Ireland, is not that far. Not that far at all. I mean, to go from the west.
That'd be Cork down south there too.
Yeah, if you go from about here, sort of the southwest region, Cork, Ireland, to St. John's, it's really not that far.
Well, if you're familiar with Irish, the regional Irish accents too, I would say the Newfie accent much more similar to the Cork accent than other areas of Ireland. So.
Yeah, and the narrative on Newfoundland is that it's even prior to it joining Canada, when it was still it's an independent state basically, and part of the British Commonwealth. There were, much like the rest of Canada, there were all kinds of campaigns to attract immigration into this region in the early part of Canadian history. Most people are well aware it's the second largest country in the world after Russia, but we're so sparsely populated. We're about a third larger than the U.S., but we only have about a tenth of the population in Canada that the U.S. has. There's some cities in the world that the population of that city almost matches the entire population of Canada as a country. So sparsely populated, and Newfoundland is a perfect example of that. And St. John's is definitely an example of that. It's not a heavily populated part of the country at all. The most heavily populated areas are kind of Toronto, Montreal, along the Great Lakes, and then in and around Vancouver and the West Coast. And then within a couple hundred miles of the Canadian border. And once you get into some of these northern regions and some of these far off regions here and into the Maritimes, I think in terms of natural resources and economy driven by resources, there's not a lot of industry out here, and there's not a lot of big corporations that, their head office is going to be based in the Maritimes. It's going to be Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the pretty remote part of the country out there, and I think the photos kind of really provide a really nice argument to that official narrative. Some of these old photos, because it seems to me that for something that's supposed to be so tough to access and something that's so sparsely populated, we're seeing a lot of pretty amazing old world buildings in these photos. So let's get back to sharing these. So back to the street scene.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see, these aren't huge, massive buildings per se, like you would see in London or Paris or Toronto or Montreal or anything like that. But Again, this being the late 1880s here in this photo, pretty large brick and stone structures here, 3, 4 story, and a couple in the back here that are really huge. And as you mentioned, looking like cobblestone here. And I think there was 2 or 3 of the main streets or avenues in St. John's around this time were cobblestone or brick, and the rest were dirt. And we'll see a lot of that in these photos.
Also, it's one massive structure. That's the row houses, right? So that's all.
Yeah, this building from this sort of corner, which looks to be almost sort of rounded or turret or maybe octagonal shaped here, all the way down to at least down to about here. Looks like one big massive structure, but then of course they divide it up into separate buildings. And I think the facading and maybe changing some of the architectural details helps to facilitate that narrative too, that oh, these are row house buildings, but really I think if you looked up its skirt, if you will, if you looked up the lady's skirt, you would tell a different story. I think this was all one big massive structure, but that would sort of really give them a lot of trouble with the official narrative that sparsely populated, it was pioneers, and it was carving out a rough living here. So it would be much harder to explain a massive building like this where they could easily explain away, oh well, no, they're just built one right next to each other and butt up against each other throughout the years and decades as the city grew.
Yeah, because that's not easy to do. Just build right next to each other too. That's another giveaway with the old world research. To me, it's smacks of something more organized than just a gradual development.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. These narratives, sometimes they just stick out like a sore thumb. I don't know how people can still. It's just a tough pill to swallow.
Well, you either choose to question or you don't. And we know, if you choose to question things, you're probably getting into this research and you're questioning what you're seeing. I think at this point, there's so much out there.
I mean, it's photos like this make it easy for all these question marks to pop up into a guy's head. I mean, this is a hill that just sort of skirts this bay or fjord here in St. John's. So it was taken from what's known as Signal Hill of St. John's proper, like sort of the downtown core. And this is taken in 1900.
Wow. Which we don't know how many people lived there then, do we? The census goes back to 1950.
Yeah, okay, that's right. Thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah, we were talking before going live, and both of us like to use Wikipedia just as a good illustration to the point of what the official narrative it is and how ridiculous it can be. And yeah, you're right. And normally you can check out a timetable of as the population grew from the 1800s into present day. But because Newfoundland joined Canada in 1949, we're only getting from 1950 onward, aren't we?
Yeah, so we wouldn't know how many people were there at the time this photo was taken,
But by 1900, this looks pretty built out already. I mean, even way off in the distance here, we're seeing something way out here on top of this hill.
Yeah.
So I mean,
we got to do a little math here, right? Like 1950, 50,000 people. Turn the clocks back 50 years. Is the population smaller? You have to assume so, I would think. How much smaller? Good question.
Well, that's the thing, because this looks already like it's way more than 50,000 people. I mean, we've got 4 stories. Sorry, it pixelates a bit here if I blow it up too much, but
that's
4-story buildings here.
Zoom it in a bit. I actually want to have a look. Yeah, okay.
It's not the best photo, unfortunately, but there's a lot of 4-story buildings here. This is that big one on that main street that we were looking at. That's cobblestone. This big one right here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of structures piercing that skyline too, like tower-like structures in the back.
A lot of these towers, a lot of big domes with cupolas on top. Another couple of sets of spires or towers here, something way off in the distance here.
That's right.
And like wrapping around this entire inlet here is like huge buildings. So if you'd say, okay, some of them are businesses, but some of these have got to be apartments. Some of these have got to be houses or homes. And to me, this looks already way larger than 50,000.
I agree.
So this I found interesting. This is a Cabo or Cabot Tower
Hmm.
at Signal Hill.
Mm.
So if we were up on this tower and they took a photo kind of down in this direction, St. John's downtown core is kind of down in here. So a lot of the photos would be taken from up here. But this thing just springing up right out of the rock.
Hmm.
And basically, Newfoundland, by the way, the nickname for Newfoundland is the Rock because it's basically the island is a giant rock outcropping that pops out of the Atlantic Ocean. So a lot of this is all over Newfoundland, this kind of stuff, which
I'm
makes
just
building really convenient, doesn't it?
looking at the official narrative here for the Cabot Tower. 1897 is when they told us they built that. Looking a couple hundred years old, but
Looking like the very top of maybe a castle.
mm,
Looks like we have
interesting.
something over here, and it looks like we could have something hanky going on here and here.
Yeah.
Maybe something's been fried, melted. Awful lot of crumbling here. I'm seeing huge stone down. Whoop. Take
We were
it
told
easy.
that we were told it's built for two reasons: to commemorate the 400th anniversary of John Cabot's discovery of Newfoundland and Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee.
Oh yes, of course. Got to have the royals. The royals in there because Canada
God,
being part of the Commonwealth. I
God
wonder
save
what
the
these.
king, right?
That's right. Oh yeah, old Chuck, King Charles III. That's right. Yeah,
What a joke.
a couple of big giant boulders here. I wonder where these tumbled from.
Yeah, and
Perhaps
looking very square, very 90-degree. Yeah.
lots of rubble all around here. So I'm wondering, was this damaged in some kind of calamity, or
Hmm.
was it melted? Is part of it buried, maybe? Because this looks very hinky. All of this to me.
The car in front's really neat too. It's a good cool photograph, that one. Really
Yeah,
nice.
it's kind of a neat old jalopy. I'm not even sure what that is. It's not your standard off the assembly line automobile because these looks like they have a private driver. So this isn't your Ford Model A type car, a little bit fancier. Kind of a
Yeah.
neat paint job on the hood and lots of fancy stuff going on with the headlights. And
It's a nice looking vehicle for sure. Yeah.
a lot more high tech than these vehicles.
Whoo.
This was known as Hay Street and the Hay Market, and you
Yeah.
can kind of see why.
Yeah, sure.
Um, a little bit of an odd narrative too. One would think that if um, St. John's and Newfoundland as a whole is basically built on a giant rock outcropping, one would think agricultural, like farming and whatnot, would be a challenge.
That was going to be my question. Is this hay being shipped in, or are they growing it? Like, I don't understand that.
This
Yeah.
is hay being taken to the market to be sold in the market, to be exported, and so on. Yeah.
Wow. So it is being grown there and harvested there.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very strange. Hmm.
And you can see the road here, just mud. You can see all the cart ruts. But meanwhile, in the background, 4-story, beautiful stone buildings here, again with these windows coming out of that complicated roof design. So again, lots of angles to have to deal with as a builder.
Yeah. How many stories? Glass, right? Coming in on the ships, right? All that's all the same old thing.
Yeah, because all of this would have had to have come from the mainland Canada. And again, Newfoundland at this time was not part of Canada, so it would have had to have been some kind of trade or commerce agreement. Or it would have had to come out of the States or out of England.
I'm seeing a lot of brick as well. Is the brick coming in on ships or?
Well, again, that's the thing. Newfoundland is an island, so the railroad, Newfoundland had its own independent railroad eventually, but nothing connecting it to the mainland except for ferries and ships. And Newfoundland not having a lot of square mileage, being a fairly small island, so not a lot of excess land to go and put up, 6 brick factories and have farms and have towns and residences popping up.
Well, let's not overlook the fact that you've got a hay market there, so you've got people in that industry. You've got mostly fishermen in this industry.
That's right.
Who's building these structures? They have all sorts of construction workers there at the time as well. Brickies? Yeah, I don't know.
I guess they would have just, I don't know, come over on the ferry at 9 in the morning, done their thing, laying bricks and stone all day, carving stone, building big, giant old world structures. At 5 o'clock when the old whistle blows, they get back on the ferry and go back to the mainland, which is absolutely ridiculous.
No, I think they're stopping in the pub for one or two, catch a bit of fiddle music before they and catch the late night ferry back.
Sure,
That's,
have a shot of screech,
of course.
eat some fish and chips. But you could see here from this photo the topography that we're talking about.
Difficult to build on. Wow.
Like, not even just building giant stone structures, but even this is obviously a residential area. It's on sort of on the outskirts of St. John's,
Mm-hmm.
and this is going to be where a lot of the fishermen. This is their homes. But I mean, not even building roads would be tough, but building the houses. Never mind those giant 4-story old world stone buildings, because you got to contend with all of this.
Yeah, and then there's the lumber. Lumber has to come through. I don't think there's a lot of forests on the island. I wouldn't think.
Newfoundland, not so much. A couple of the other maritime islands, I think New Brunswick, I think is most known out of the eastern islands and maritime region as having the most forested area. Newfoundland, again, it's just a big rock. It's very tough for a lot of vegetation to cling on there and grow.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you got to build this, and then you're farming hay somewhere in here, I guess. And, all of these are on stilts because they've got their own little, the water levels here change dramatically, up to about 10 feet, the tides and so on.
Yeah, it doesn't look like an area where you would sail past and say, "Hey, let's settle here."
Yeah.
You'd probably wait for something that's a little bit more manageable to navigate, I would think.
So now we're getting into back into the downtown, because this is St. John's Cathedral in St. John's, Newfoundland, and this thing just blows my mind. This thing was built in right around 1900, give or take. Of course, you can see it's built on a massive slant because the entire topography is like this. So imagine building this pre-railroad on an island, and just look at the size of this thing. But again, you can see all kinds of hinky stuff going on here with different levels, lots of debris here. And this wasn't labeled as a construction photo. It just was labeled as St. John's Cathedral. But this is a massive, massive building.
Well, that's got to be the only cathedral in a town that small. You don't need more than one, right?
Well, you'd think that even at the peak, which is modern times, 50,000, you'd think that this would service the entire island, and just everybody from all the little fishing villages and little hamlets that are on the island would all just come into the city on Sunday to go to this cathedral. The bloody thing looks like it's at least 3-4 floors.
Yeah.
Well, maybe on this side it's 3 floors, and on this side it's 4 floors. Because you got some hanky stuff going on here and here. So yeah, you would think that, wouldn't you? Oh, but not the case, because we got another giant cathedral here. Got another giant one here in the background.
All in the same street, is it?
And then here's that St. John's one again. And I mean, apparently we've got so many cathedrals on this street that it's known as Cathedral Street in St. John's.
What about that rock wall there as well? I'm looking at that, looking like something pretty special.
Well, that is standard workmanship for fishermen. Every fisherman in St. John's had to be able to build stone walls and big, giant, old world European style cathedrals here and here with, tech on top. So what you do is, after being out on the Atlantic Ocean, fishing, with big giant nets and these big fishing trawlers, after doing that for 12 hours a day, you got to come ashore, have a quick bite to eat, and then we got to put you to work building these stone walls on these massively steep, sloped streets that are all just mud. We've got paved sidewalks for you, sure, but the rest of it is just debris and mud and dirt.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, why such focus on the sidewalks? Having all that curb work perfect. It's interesting.
And definitely looking like it's already well established and been here for a while. This tree is not a sapling. This
That's true.
tree is not a
Yeah,
small tree.
yeah.
And again, you know, this is Newfoundland's a big rock. Trees don't grow as quickly as they do in areas that have more fertile soil, like northern Ontario or Manitoba
Or
or northern
BC.
Quebec or BC.
Good point. It's a good point.
A tree like this in Newfoundland with harsh winters, strong winds, lots of deep, heavy snow is not going to grow as quickly as it will in Ontario or in British Columbia.
Yeah.
So this is pretty good sized trees, especially this bugger here. I mean, it's as tall as, or if not taller than these buildings across the street.
Yeah, check out the scaffolding too. That's a really interesting photo. They've got it sort of shrouded in scaffolding and looking very skimpy.
Yeah, and I'm not seeing any tradesmen on the scaffolding at all. I see a couple of guys down here with their hands in their pockets looking up at the photographer on the roof of whatever building he's taking this photo from.
Posing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, there's the guy with the camera, so we better pose. But yeah, where's all the... I don't even see any tools or equipment. I don't even see wheelbarrows around here.
Oh, just rubble. You see a lot of rubble there.
Yeah, I just see some wood here. Looks like a window leaning against this thing.
A makeshift shed style tin roof with a little chimney coming out.
Got a ladder here, so ye olde ladder lean for Douglas over at UAP. He loves his ladder leans over there.
Yeah.
But to me, this looks like this is already built. I mean, it's not much different than this picture.
No.
Right? It's already built here. To me, this looks like they're fixing up what they can after unveiling this thing, digging part of it out, finding it. And then here they've just put some scaffolding up so they can maybe put a new roof on it, is to me, I think.
Well, I see someone in the chat here what is this mud flooding, right? Well, that's kind of what we're hinting at here is a digging out of an old world civilization and repurposing of the old buildings rather than the historical narrative that we've been given, that all of this stuff was just popping up at this period of time.
That's right. The theory on the reset cataclysm, one of them being a mud flood, or something caused the earth to flow in sort of a slow wave, whether it was some kind of liquefaction or actual mud coming from higher up elevations and flowing down into lower elevations. But the theory is that a lot of these structures that, especially here in Canada, don't fit our narrative of being such a young part of the world. This looks like it belongs in France, like in Paris, France, or in, like older parts of the realm that we're told, like old European countries. And you can see here how the street slopes downward. So more of the lower levels of the building are revealed on this side than up here. So this is not how we would build a building. Not back then, not now in modern times. You would level out the ground so that you have an easier sort of base to build your foundation, or actually dig your foundation, pour or build your foundation out of old stones. And then once you're level with your ground, which has been leveled, then you start to build your structure out of brick or wood framing or a combination of both, or iron beams and brick and stone, until eventually you get it to the height you want, you put your roof on it, and Bob's your uncle. But with all of this rubble down here and these multi-levels and having windows and doors that look like they're still semi-submerged underneath a severely sloping street, just lends itself to the idea that this was here longer than we were told, and there was some kind of catastrophe that caused the earth to flow downward and partially bury this. And then what we're told are construction photos are actually perhaps these buildings being rediscovered by a new influx of new people coming into these old world cities.
Headed by the church and the crown, really.
The church, the crown, the Freemasons, and other organizations.
Which
And
is
then,
all really the same organization when you get up the ladder. But
yeah, they're all under the same umbrella. And then they would fix them up as best they could with the technology and the knowledge that they had. And, put new roofs on them, maybe move away some of the earth so they could get access to the buildings. And then they basically take over the building and they build a new narrative around why that building is there. Well, it looks different than all these other buildings because it's old. So it's a church. So that it was built by the early settlers and missionaries and the early Catholic Church, just as Canada was first being settled in the 1600s. And that, for most people, goes a long way to explaining away why there's massive old world looking structures that look like they belong in Prague instead of St. John's, Newfoundland, where it's nothing but fishermen.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
So here we have the Colonial Building.
Mm.
Again, massive columns with the representing the what's that called? The Taurus field.
Yeah, the energy, when you get into the energetics of because it's part of the old world narrative for people that aren't all that familiar with it. As this old world civilization, realm wide, was able to harness the energy of the ether, much like what we know of as Tesla and what he was into.
Mm-hmm.
And all these buildings have to do with harnessing the energetics of the ether, basically.
Yeah, so a lot of this stuff here that we're told are flagpoles or lightning rods could have perhaps one of the theories, and we've actually seen it in video. That there's an old Tibetan monastery where you can hear the Tibetan monks chanting inside the building, and then this thing sort of lights up. Mm-hmm. And it's got all these little arms, metallic arms or antennae that come out, and they actually move and spread outward, and you can see energy. You could basically see electrical energy sparking up on the thing. So the theory is that these were gathering free energy that's in the ether, mm-hmm. perhaps.
I've heard people speculate that they're using this technology, the insiders, shall we say, are still using this technology in some of their locations as well.
Yeah, I've heard of entire cities in regions in the Middle East that nobody that lives in the city pays for power. Electricity is free.
Yeah. Azerbaijan or
I've heard two. I can't remember the names of them, unfortunately, but yeah.
Okay.
But again, this is to service fishermen that are poor and are living off the dole, for 3/4 of the year on a rocky island in Newfoundland. So you're going to want big, giant pillars, and not just a couple on each end. No, you want 2, 4, 6 of them.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that building in almost every city in North America.
Yeah, it's just a scaled down version of a lot of American state capitol buildings or Carnegie libraries, city halls. Big, massive cartouche here with coat of arms. Of course, you got to go up 114 million stairs to get in, but it's hard to see. But right down here, looks to me like there's a little window there. So this thing's got a foundation and maybe a basement. So again, these fishermen are having to dig down into a rocky soil to be able to put the foundation to build this heavy structure on top of. These aren't just concrete footings and then, a few wooden beams and then you put shiplath and plaster walls and you're good to go. This is very obviously brick with stone facading, or maybe even just stone and no brick, but probably brick with stone facading.
Sure. Quick shout out to Matthew at Marvelous Old World. I see you in the chat there. Nice to see you, bud.
Yeah, a lot of people are jumping in. Good to see everybody here. Isabella Live 2.0. Odin's Raven is here. Joe Cool. Hey, there's old friend Annie sneaking in. I didn't see you there, Annie. Hello. Deanne's here as well. Yeah, good to see all of you. Thanks for joining. And if you haven't already, a reminder too, just to hit the thumbs up, like the video. Help push this out into the YouTube algorithm because everybody knows YouTube hates this kind of stuff. So, and links in the description for both my channel and Old World Explorations channel as well.
And join the conversation, guys. Don't be shy. Let your mind wander. Get your ideas. We can sort of build on each other's ideas. So,
downtown St. John's. one of the busier streets, but not the busiest, where they would bother to brick or cobblestone the street.
Mm.
But they've still paved the sidewalk. That could be wooden, but it looks to me like it's paved here and maybe here too.
Yeah.
And then they've got little ramps going up from the muddy street to get you up onto the sidewalk, which looks like it's a few inches up. Again, still horse and cart time. And again, not huge buildings, but by the narrative, these shouldn't be here. Big
Yeah, the
3 and 4-story buildings.
row houses. Yeah.
I mean, this is supposed to be just a bunch of fishermen huddled together on the rocky shores of Newfoundland, trying to scratch out a living in the 1800s, early 1900s. Look, imagine how much of a pain in the butt that would have been. You're going to the market, or you're a mercantile, or you're a tradesman. I don't know, you've got something that you've made in your studio or in your, I don't know, your business, your factory, and you got to bring it over to the local distributor here, or to the, I don't know, commerce building, or to the market. So you got to load all that into your horse and buggy and take it in to one of these buildings to sell it, one of these retail buildings. You got to get through all this crap, back and forth, back and forth. So they can, put these brick and stone buildings here, but they can't be bothered to line the street with it.
Apparently. I don't know.
But they can still, have low windows here. So these buildings all have foundations or maybe basements.
Well, that gets to the whole idea of blasting, where they're on an island, the amount of rock there. If you're going down into the ground, you're probably blasting.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Either that, or you get, 1,000 guys with pickaxes, and that's no easy task.
Off season, right? Off season fishermen.
Yeah, that's right. Because again, we're told by the narrative, the economy is based almost entirely on fishing. So, what do these guys have? 3 or 4 different vocational skill sets that they've learned. They're fishermen and bricklayers, or fishermen and stonecutters. Like, come on, man. This is obviously a little further along. This is
I
really like again.
The mansard roofs with the you can see
these here.
Yeah, interesting. The curve though, right? The curved mansard roof.
Yeah, you got to have this curve here. Sorry if you're hearing. My mic is picking up. There's an ambulance going by. It's nice out today, so I have my window open.
Yeah.
But here now, at least we've got some brick or pave. I'm thinking cobblestone or brick here.
Streetcar there?
At least for the streetcar to use,
Yeah. Huh.
But again, this reminiscent of those sort of New York row house style, but you got to go up all these steps to get in. And again, it's kind of a crummy picture, but it looks to me like there might be some fencing here with lower levels going down as well. But big, massive structures here in the background. That's that one with the columns, the colonial building.
Colonial building, yeah.
And again, big, massive stone churches. But in the background, you can see it's all hills, all rock. So like you said, no easy task. This was labeled very poorly. It's from some website from some photographer, Hoffman. But I don't know if this is a church or an old school. It looks like it might be an old Catholic school.
Yeah, school is what I'm thinking, just looking at it. But it's a really old-looking brickwork or stonework, actually.
Yeah, you got stone here.
Yeah.
This may be an add-on. Maybe this was originally the old world structure, looking a little older or a different color anyway, a different age. Or maybe this was the original and then they added this on.
Yeah.
Or
and
maybe
the roof's redone.
Or these two were separate buildings and they joined them with this, maybe.
Yeah. It's all good shouts, all possible for sure. Yeah.
Got something hanky going on here. Again, you could see the ground slopes downward. So we've got larger windows here, or maybe doors, but then smaller here on the same level. Why would you build like that? The rest of them are all uniform in size, front and side. On all the buildings, they're all uniform.
Yeah.
Except for here. So you mean to tell me with limited resources and limited skilled and unskilled labor, you're going to build a structure like this, but then add in the difficulty and the pain in the ass of having different size windows. So if this breaks and you got to replace it, you can't just replace it with a spare one of these. You gotta have this specially made or custom made glass, and your glass fitter come and have to custom cut this because it's different than this size.
Yeah, more evidence for sure.
I think we're seeing maybe something potentially down here too, maybe here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here.
Yeah.
Maybe here. But then, of course, you got to go up some stairs to get in.
Yeah, interesting.
Looks like here too. In fact, this one looks arched. See if I can get in. Oh, dang it. Come on, quit screwing with me here. Come on now, guys. Just wanting to look at a half-buried arched window here.
I can see it, yeah, underneath the window there. Yeah.
Right here?
Yeah.
It's because these are all arched.
Some circular ones up top there, too.
Yeah, oh yeah. Got to have your portals.
This is fishing narrative, right?
Right here. Something here, too. Some kind of coat of arms or symbol.
Sure, yeah.
Bell tower with no bell in it.
Well, they got rid of the bells, right?
Oh, at some point they did, yeah. But, you've got 2 bell towers. Like, if this is a school, how many bells do you have to ring to let the kids know lunchtime's over and to get back to,
well,
putting your nose in the books?
Maybe even more than 2.
Yeah.
My kids sometimes need more than that.
So that's why I think maybe this was maybe some kind of old world structure. Perhaps this was as well, built out of different material. Like you said, looking like really old stonework here. And then maybe later on they join the two, because to me, this door looks like you walk straight in. This one, you've got to go up some stairs.
Yeah, that's right.
So different levels here, maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Interesting. Must be Catholic. St. John. Yeah. Oh, no. We don't know exactly what it was, do we?
Yeah, no. This might be St. John's School.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why. I mean, it's definitely labeled St. John's, and it's definitely St. John's, Newfoundland. Mm-hmm. But I just found a lot of this to be funny in the different cupolas that you needed. You need so many cupolas on one building, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, this one, they've labeled it the Murray premises. So I'm not sure if this belonged to the Murrays or this belonged to the Murrays. But a very telling photo, because right here you can see how this slopes down from, if one of these fellers was standing here, he's about 5 feet lower down than standing here. And again, if you're trying to save resources, because the economy is so, it's hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, for lack of a better term, in this part of the Canada, and that's always been the narrative. Why would you make it tougher on yourself to build by having these windows are the same size as these? These are different. Okay, I get it, but now a third size, and then one is semi-submerged, a couple are bricked in. So you build the building and then you decide, I don't want a couple of these windows, so let's brick them in after all. It's just very, very odd. So to me, this looks like mud flood. To me, this goes down to at least here on this side, but probably further down because the street continues to slope down. And of course, these guys got nothing better to do but stand around and get their photo taken, I guess.
Their suits.
This is weird.
Suits. Yep. Energy harnessing, possibly. Remnants of something.
It's got a funny shape to it, that's for sure.
Yeah, like a node.
I like all the tall ship masts in the background, too. You see that a lot, obviously, in the Maritimes, because the ocean and the ports are not that far away. A couple of blocks, from the downtown core, and boom, right there.
Yeah.
This is the Newfoundland Hotel.
Railway hotel?
Is
it attached to the railway or no? I don't. I'm just guessing. This
is the streetcar. I'm not sure. I had a hard time finding any other pictures except for it's still standing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot out there online of modern pictures, but not a lot of older photos of this. I
Yeah.
found one that was taken in the uh, right around 1900. This is late 20s, I believe. I found one
Okay.
earlier than this, but it was from a bad angle and it was sort of cut off halfway. And there was a bunch of these trees were in the background. I think it was taken from further down this road, maybe.
Oh yeah.
So this is sort of the best one I could find. But a beautiful old building, lots of brick.
Yeah, for the 20s, that's a lot of work. Again, what's the population of St. John's in the 20s? We don't know, but we know it was 50,000 in 30 years after that.
Yeah,
So
1950 it was 50,000. So in the 30s, in the 20s, in the 1900s, who knows?
this is a big
But this is
production.
this is a pretty bloody big building. I mean, I've seen hotels as big as this in way larger cities in Canada. Here in Calgary, in Toronto, Montreal, like
Uh-huh.
pretty big cities.
Yeah.
They would have more than one this size, but they would definitely have one this size. So this is pretty
Plus
big.
7, 8 stories tall brick. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
And who's going out to St. John's? Like, is their tourism industry and their traveling salesmen, is it enough to warrant having such a large hotel for such a small city?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that intrigued me is this one in the background here too, with all of these portals here, and very interesting. Some nice detail along here.
Yeah, very similar, reminding me of what I saw in Edmonton as well. Those corners and the red brick, and then the corners with some sort of cement polymer brick
It could
block,
be.
whatever.
Yeah, it could be stone block or concrete block or some kind of polymer or something. I mean, we know stone is readily available in Newfoundland and the whole thing's a rock, but
yeah,
whether it's feasible as a construction material, I don't know. I would imagine a lot of it's probably granite, and that sort of thing.
It's hard to cut, that's for sure.
Another good sized hotel here, the Crosby Hotel, with some huge tech on the top. But here again, you can see, look at the extreme slope of this street. So that this building on the main high street here, the main floor, the main entrance is at street level. And you got to go up.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You got to go up to the second floor, which is at ground level on this street. So they put a door in here.
Yeah.
So I think that there was some kind of flow of the earth here. They had to build a big stone retaining wall here. So who built this bloody big massive thing? And then put stone stairs in here. And then they've got all this fancy stuff here. And these are people obviously gathered around to watch whatever this parade is. But again, in the background, look at this massive
huge vertical building. Building vertically all the time, right? Like that adds so much to the operation on a build.
With the more of the cathedral style sort of pointed arches here. And again, you can see that detail running along the side of the building here.
Yep.
All kinds of maybe old wind catcher systems here. And here's that St. John's Cathedral again in the background. And again, still looking like it's partially buried under the muck. I mean, this just looks like crap here. This is all just dirt and crud down here too. Like all of this is just keeps flowing down. Like this at one time you could tell just flowed right down here. And they kind of dug it away, built a wall, and said, okay, you got a dead end street here. So if your horse and buggy comes down here, they got to turn around and go back up.
I had a thought, you know how they all have the Great Fire narratives? What if that's really just a placeholder for when they start digging themselves out of the mud, right? So it's an explanation for the devastation that they still have yet to clean up in many cases.
Yes, absolutely. And as we all have come to learn by picking apart the official narrative, pretty much every town or city of any significant size has had at least one Great Fire. Calgary's had one, Vancouver, Toronto. Some have had multiple Great Fires, and I know what they're calling the Great St. John's Fire was 1892, and I've got some photos of the devastation for that. But you're right, the perfect vehicle to serve as to explain away the narrative of, well, these buildings shouldn't be here, so we got to destroy them somehow. So whoops, there was a fire. So if the fire didn't destroy it, they used dynamite to destroy the building, to create a fire break so the flames couldn't leap from one stone and brick building across an entire street to another stone and brick building for that one to burn down.
At approximately 4:45 in the afternoon of July 8th, 1892, a dropped pipe in Timothy O'Brien's stable atop Carter's Hill on Freshwater Road began the fire. That's your
Dropped
Wikipedia.
pipe?
Yeah, he dropped a pipe in the stable, Timothy O'Brien's stable. I love the specifics of some of these stories for how these fires were started.
And it always seems that they're started in a barn, a stable, a feedlot. Like the Great Calgary fire supposedly was started by some spark at a feedlot, like a wooden storage shed for animal feed, like horse or cattle feed. And, it went up like a tinderbox, and that eventually destroyed a bunch of the buildings in the city. So, the stupid narrative for the Great Chicago Fire, which is now the mainstream has said, no, it's a hoax, but the cow kicking over a lantern, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
What kind of pipe? Yeah. Was it a plumbing pipe? Was it a smoking pipe?
Yeah, right. A dropped pipe.
So he dropped his pipe and it in a stable, and it burned down the entire city.
Brick buildings as well, brick and stone buildings too, right? Not just the wood ones.
Yeah.
Same old, right?
This I'm not sure what LSPU Hall stands for.
Maybe university of some sort. Not sure, just guessing.
But you can see here, got a portal here and another one here, and again that sort of curved roof line here on the top of this tower, and again multiple different levels of entrances.
Yeah.
Not sure about this road. This looks like it could be dirt or mud too, although I want to say that this is sort of the main Broad Street or Broadway or High Street. I want to say of all of them, this would be brick or cobblestone, but it looks pretty crummy, so it's hard to tell.
I honestly think when you see the mud look, I think it's mud over top of something firmer.
Yeah,
I think that's what we're seeing a lot of.
Yeah, I think that would
keep it easy. It eases
I would
the
agree
hoofs.
with that. Yeah,
eases the horses, or the horses' hooves. I think it eases it a little bit to keep a bit of mud on the cobbles.
Now this shot's been either damaged or photo manipulated a little bit for some reason. Obviously, you can see around here. But again, like all of these buildings, this is like 4 stories and it's stone. You've got a curved turret here with a conical dome on this church, but then a big pointy spire. And again, a little tack here and here.
I don't think I saw that church in any other photos. I don't know what the one that is.
I'm not sure which one this is. Most of what the photos I found are focusing on these cathedrals on Cathedral Street over here. But again, these going right down to the ground level too. But they're looking to be at least the same size as these, but big, massive pitched roof here. And again, off in the distance, stone here, some kind of chimney or spire here, some kind of dome or something. Like as far as the eye can see, this is all built out. All the way up this hill, all built out way up here.
Yeah, for really a small city, right? Would have had to have been a small city at the time, population-wise.
Like, how do you go about building stuff like this in amongst crap like that? Like, it would be so hard to.
As a construction worker too, the difficulty day in and day out of continuing to build in that fashion too would really wear you down.
Can you see some here? Looks like some fenced off, maybe pastures or farmland here on this. This has kind of got an easier slope to it, not as extreme. But obviously this, I mean, there's not even trees growing here. That's just big rock outcroppings, maybe. Or maybe there's something underneath this. Maybe at one time was this something like this that's been so damaged that it's not even recognizable anymore.
Well, I wonder what it looks like now. A lot of these, you see a lot of photos from that time period that are looking bleak and no vegetation. And nowadays we have all this vegetation. So it's almost like the fresh mud flood, right?
Yeah. And, a lot of the narrative is that, with it being a fishing industry, I mean, not much forestry, not much else going on. So, I mean, let's say you just landed in this area back, let's say let's say around 1800, right? Like,
Mhm.
what would it have looked like? Maybe some of these old world buildings would have been here and semi buried, or lower floors semi submerged under the terra firma. But would there have been vegetation?
Mhm.
Maybe some newer vegetation, but maybe the mud flood would have done some damage to some of the trees. Uh, Maybe there were multiple resets or multiple cataclysms,
Mhm.
which personally I think is what we're seeing a lot of. We're seeing much earlier cataclysms would have been some sort of heat or plasma discharge that melted stuff, and then a more modern, by comparison,
Yeah.
catastrophe of mud flooding or liquefaction or whatever you want to call it, where the earth flowed slowly and buried some of the buildings.
And then whether it's natural or whether it's induced with by the ones who took over the realm is sort of in the area of discussion for people in this research as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, there's a more modern picture. This is getting in the late 20s, early 30s, but again, they were hanging on to these old world buildings here. What they were able to save from the fire and what they didn't knock down to put more modern stuff up yet. You can see there's still a lot of beautiful detail. There's some kind of symbol in here. These bay windows that are built out, I mean, that's just extra time and expense for a part of the country we're told didn't have the resources.
Yeah, well, then the question is, was it a fire, or was it this is all just placeholders for um, resetting of the region, right? Bring in immigrants, say, oh, there was a fire here 3 years ago. We have to rebuild this. We have to rebuild that. And they don't know any better. You're coming from a different area, and you're just picking up the shovel and the trowel and doing what you have to survive. So, just stories. I think we're just fed a lot of stories.
Yeah, and you and I've talked about this before. A lot of these narratives are so similar to other parts of the realm that it's like it's a rubber stamp. They come up with maybe 3 or 4 dozen stories, and then they just change the person's names, the city name, jumble around the years and the timeline a little bit, and then they just rubber stamp very similar narratives to a bunch of cities that maybe are similar geographically or what have you. I've
Yeah,
talked about the similarities between the narratives of Alberta here in Canada and Texas down in the US.
yeah, yeah. It's like matrix programming, but it's thinly coded. Like it's not detailed enough. That's how
Yeah,
it
that
feels like.
rather than coming up with thousands of different narratives and stories, they came up with a few dozen, and that's good enough.
Uh,
Those bozos will never figure it out. Har har har.
Well, they're relying on us to not care about our history, right? Relying on us to be. They're not going to care. We'll give them so much entertainment and distraction. They're not going to care about the past. They won't even look into it. That's,
Yeah,
I think, what's going
absolutely.
on here. But we're looking into it. We're hot on the trail, I'd say.
And so this is the St. John's Post Office.
Yes, yes. I got some pictures of this one too. Well, you need a post office with a dome.
You need a dome with a bunch of tech on top, on this cupola, on this tower, so that you can write letters back and forth. Fishermen can write letters back and forth to their family over in the UK or into the mainland Canada or down in the US. So you need a big, massive structure like this built on a sloping road with really low windows here.
Brick
That
Street.
Yeah, you got your brick street here,
Yeah.
some funny low windows down here, and you need all this fancy arches and big, massive doors and columns.
Uh-huh.
Just to buy stamps and send parcels.
Yeah, they didn't. They don't seem to have done a lot of cleanup. Um, they kept that old dingy look for this region back then. It seems like.
Yeah, looking very aged here and
Yeah.
here.
Maybe struggling to dig themselves out of this cataclysm. Evidence of the cataclysm took time. Maybe that's why they didn't join Canada till the mid 1900s.
Yeah, could be, could be.
Right.
And with a smaller population, it would have taken a lot longer, right?
Yeah.
Even if the area wasn't as developed as some of the other major cities we see in Canada and the U.S., even still, it would have taken a long time.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of unique too. You don't often see glass windows in these things, so I don't know if this was a modern add-on or alteration, but they kept the
Possible.
tech up there.
Yeah. You couldn't, probably because they couldn't get up there.
Yeah, it was hard. They didn't have
They just
anybody
didn't want to make
ballsy
the
enough to
effort.
scramble up here.
That's right. Population was low, right? I mean, it makes sense. A lot of it is a lot of the stuff survived because they just weren't able to get rid of it. Didn't
If you
have the
think I'm
money.
going up there by you, crazy.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, our last Canucklehead show, we talked about Old World Winnipeg, and we were looking at a lot of the streetcars. And because of the narrative of Winnipeg, is it's a small city and there's nothing going on there, never has, never will be. Don't come here. There's nothing to see or do here. The streetcars were a little smaller, right? The trolleys, and I noticed that that's the case here in St. John's too. So that would sort of fit the official narrative that a smaller city, uh, a newer part of the country in terms of joining Canada, that their streetcars would be a little smaller in terms of infrastructure. But this looking like some cool tech with the overhead electric system.
Mm-hmm.
This is you got your headlight and your bell. Would this have been at one time pulled by horse? I couldn't find any pictures to that effect, but probably. Prior to electric, you probably had horse-drawn trolleys in St. John's too.
That's what we're always told, right? Depends on how early they give us for the narrative on that. I'll see if I can dig something up.
This is looking a little like it's been manipulated or enhanced or something too, a little bit. Kind of funny, but see, the thing on this is I'm not sure the year on this because I couldn't reverse image search it to find out. But I'm not seeing any vehicles. I'm only seeing horse and buggy. But we are seeing electric, and we are seeing a big electric, what looks like transformer up here. So we've got to be fairly far along here. But I don't see any cars. But I'm still seeing a lot of tech, and again, a lot of this complicated angles with the construction. I mean, you think this is easy to build, this octagonal turret thing on the side of the building? And then the one on the other side is different still.
Yeah, I know.
You got to make it tougher for yourself,
St. John's streetcars, 1900 to 1948, we're being told, is when they were in existence.
1900 to 1948?
Yeah, that's when they were.
So they got rid of the streetcars, and then they joined Canada the following year.
Sounds about right. Yeah, that's interesting.
Why would they do that, I wonder?
Timing. Curious. I'm actually looking at the title of a CBC article. It says St. John's was once on par with San Francisco for streetcars. Come on.
Maybe just because it's so hilly that there's the comparison there. But I mean, maybe they're the same size. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, the San Francisco trolleys aren't that big. They're kind of this size.
Yeah, you make a good point. But you're right. Some of the visuals we've seen with the slope have reminded me of some of the San Francisco slopes that we've seen on the streets there as well.
But we're not seeing streets bustling with streetcar after streetcar after streetcar all lined up like we do in San Francisco. Even in the old photos of San Francisco. I mean, if somebody said to me, think of a Canadian city that reminds you of San Francisco, St. John's, Newfoundland would not be the first that pops into my head. It would probably be Vancouver.
No, exactly.
Or maybe Victoria.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be St. John's. St. John's reminds me of Ireland, to be quite honest with you. It reminds me of like Belfast or pretty much any major or half decent sized Irish town or city.
And it looks like it starts as an electrical railway. 1896, I'm looking at St. John's Street Railway Company started up. So they don't have the horse narrative there.
1896 St. John's Rail Company for the trolleys?
Yes, St. John's Street Railway Company formed by Robert G. Reed in 1896. Yeah.
Okay, but it went from 1900 to 1948, but then they say 1896.
Yeah, this company was formed in 1896. They began operation in 1900, we're told.
Oh, so it took them 4 years to get their act together and start moving the trains around, I guess.
I guess so.
I guess they had to dig up all the track that was already buried first.
Well, I mean, there's all that to throw in as well. Rolls-Royce was owned by this gentleman as well. Rolls-Royce.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
So this is a war memorial ceremony, obviously.
I think I found this one as well. Yeah, look at that. Look at the pomp.
No year on this. I'm assuming World War One because the vehicles in the back here look roughly 19 teens, maybe early 1920s.
Let's see
So I'm
if I.
thinking end of World War One, maybe,
I'm
or
just
it
gonna see if I have it.
could be the 100-year anniversary of the War of 1812. So this might be 1912, but these cars look too new to be 1912. So I think it's after World War One.
Yeah, I have it as a war memorial. I have that same photo. Yeah. So
But I
World War
mean,
One.
so let's be generous. Let's say this car is 1925. So World War One ended in when 1919,
Oh,
something like that. I think.
so we're told 14 to 19, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So after the war, it only took them, I guess, a couple of years to build this big, massive stone. And I mean, it's not just this. I mean,
That
it's
looks
all these
old.
pathways, stone stairs, big, massive retaining wall with all of this crud with, your wrought iron fencing, big, giant brass statues. I'm assuming it's brass because it looks like a different material than this stuff. But even if it's stone, you got to get that up there somehow with old hoists. But you've got all of these walkways. You've got lights here, big lights here. So they didn't just bang this up at the end of the war to celebrate the victory of the Allies in World War One. I mean, this would have taken a lot of time.
Absolutely. Oh, would have taken a lot of. You'd have to move dirt and earth to escape it in such a way as well, right? You got to put the stairs in there and then the pathways. Yeah, it's
Right.
quite a bit.
And then they've got to build it in tiers, of course, because you can see the street here, how dramatically this slopes down on this side. And even this one is sloping downward this way from this, what seems to be a high point over here. So you can even see the grounds here, very sloping. So again, the reason why they had to build it in different tiers or layers like that is because the flow of the land here, right? So not exactly easy to do. And again, in the background, all built out all the way around here. Again, cupolas and towers and tech everywhere. And I love how back in the day when there was some kind of ceremony or parade, people would climb trees, they'd climb lampposts. You got people up on the roofs of the buildings here.
Yep.
I guess everybody loves a parade. People hanging out the windows. Sure, that I understand. But are you that excited that you got to see it from up here? You can't join the festivities on the ground. I don't know.
No, it's part of those old world photos. Yeah, they're everywhere. Yeah.
You always see people, up on the lampposts or power lines. You see them up in trees.
Makes you wonder about if these photos, if they're just messing around with us and retouching these photos, right? Because some of these you can zoom right in on, and you'll actually find that they're penciled in.
Yeah, the people are penciled in sometimes. Yeah.
But it's hard to tell when you make it all grainy and obscured. It's all just you're taking at face value.
Yeah, and it looks like they started to photo manipulate this too. Maybe they wanted to make a postcard out of this, so maybe the idea was they were going to paint out these buildings here and just leave the park and the people and the memorial and the statues itself, and then maybe, I don't know, they just decided against it or found a better photo or I don't know what, but something weird going on here.
Ooh.
So this is Water Street, and it's just called the Water Street Corner Building. Not the most creative name, but again, you need this when you're a bunch of broke-ass fishermen in St. John's with these big, massive arches and big, massive arch doors here. And
little mud flutter going down below.
And then down here, separate entrance here to get into something. That looks like it might say YMCA, maybe, or...
Is that right, eh?
Maybe. No, maybe not. I don't know what that says, but you've got small window, bigger window, and then big enough to put a door, and then big window, big window. And again, this is just mud, dirt, crap.
Yeah.
But then you've got your sidewalk here in front of the nicer part of the building, I guess your main entrance. Yeah. And then the sidewalk just ends here.
Yeah, that's strange.
But the building continues on. So again, I don't know if this is pavement or wood. Looks pretty consistent. Looks like it could be pavement of some kind.
Yeah.
But all mud here, and again, just horse and buggy. I'm not seeing any cars anywhere.
Mm.
These ruts look narrow. They don't look like car tire
No.
ruts. But a beautiful building. Pretty
Yeah.
fancy.
That streetcar article also saying that streetcars came before any cars came to St. John's, before there were any automobiles at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that I can see.
Yeah.
So I just want to remind everybody that generally when O and myself are discussing construction and dates and all these wacky narrative to do with Canada, you got to take into consideration build times and our Canadian climate. So this is a shot of St. John's on Military Road taken in the 1920s. And you can see they've already shoveled away this snow and piled it up on top. But let's say this woman is 5 feet tall. So you've got snow that's 5 feet deep here.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not unusual in this part of Canada.
That'll put a damper on construction, I'll tell you.
So they're building this kind of thing where they're getting this kind of stuff in the winter. And winter comes early. October, winter hits Newfoundland. And it's there until May. So, I'm not saying the snow is 5 or 6 feet deep right until May. Obviously it accumulates, and then in December, January, February, you get the deepest snow. And then as temperatures rise and the snowfalls decrease, you end up with less and less snow as you get into April and May. But that said, you're not building massive buildings when you've got this much snow and blizzard, and it's that wet, heavy snow. And Newfoundland gets windy. It's a rock outcropping in the Atlantic Ocean. So you get those high winds. So not easy to put up this kind of stuff when you've got this crap for 6 or 8 months out of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I've got for old photos, except for the fire, the Great Fire of 1892, I believe, is what it was.
Yeah, show us some of the devastation, if you don't mind. Is that what you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got 1892 is the official narrative on the Great St. John's Fire. Now they had fires prior to, and they've had pretty significant fires since in the early 1900s and later. But this is the one that they've labeled as their Great Fire, right? And every city's got to have a Great Fire.
We call it the Reset Fire. We should call it the Reset.
Yeah, this is the good point. This is sort of the tipping off. This is where they say, okay, this is where we now can reset the narrative. So I find it funny that, you've got a building like this that's obviously damaged next to one that's destroyed, across the street from one that's destroyed or damaged here. But this one seems fine. So that's okay. So obviously not significant enough to be damaged or to be put in the crosshairs for whatever reason.
There's another one right behind it in the background with the roof still intact. Yeah, there.
This one here, yeah. And this looks to be like a wooden one. And this looks wooden. And this looks wooden. So these are fine. But the stone and mason building right beside it, completely destroyed by fire.
So it seems obvious to me when looking at this that we're looking at targeted attack. That's what it looks and feels like to me, if this is the case.
Yeah, we've often hear of speculation of DEW, the direct energy weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely a possibility in a controlled reset, as opposed to a naturally occurring cyclical reset. And I find this odd, though. Like, this is completely, the walls are caved in, supposedly. You can see the rubble here and here. The roof's been burned down. But there's some, looks like still a portion of the second floor, like flooring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, not just the floor joists, but the actual flooring remains? Or maybe part of a roof? Am I crazy? Or is that...
Yeah, something like that. Hard to tell. Maybe it's something
this is
that was
all
covered
destroyed.
over after.
It's all destroyed, but this is fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've seen the cannons actually as a part of the theory as well, in some sort of direct energy usage. What we think of as the old cannons weren't actually firing balls, but possibly having something to do with the ether system and them hijacking the energy system. I don't know. This is obviously way out there, but if we're going to get into and targeted attacks, and we got to throw it out there for sure.
Well, the other thing I find strange about this photo is you've got clusters of buildings here that are all destroyed, with the exception of a couple that seem completely intact, and it's fine. And I don't think, like, this is fresh after the fire. Like, you'd still see some smoldering here in the background here.
Okay.
Unless it's maybe just haze or something. But so it's not like, 2 days after the fire, they just quickly put these buildings up. I mean, this one's mud flooded a bit. So
yeah,
these survived the fire right next to ones that didn't. But then you've got these massive gaps between buildings, but they're still destroyed. So how did the fire leap from, let's say, this big building all the way over to this? Or how did the fire leap from here to here, but leave this one undamaged? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So definitely some direct energy or something. It was targeted. Like you said, there's definitely targeting going on here.
Well, the pipe was dropped in the hay. That's what happened.
Yeah, maybe maybe they dropped it here in the hay, and then somebody else dropped it in some hay over here.
That's right. All sorts of pipes were dropping that day.
Smoking a pipe was the fad.
Yeah, must have been.
Who knows? So there's a lot of multiple pipe smoking incidents going on. And the other thing that's crazy is, I mean, you're right on the waterfront. I mean, you can't pump the water from right here onto these buildings.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plumbing in these buildings, so we're told. There's fountains in the downtown core of St. John, so we're told, around this time period. So if you can pump the water into fountains, then why can't you pump the water onto these burning buildings, right?
Not many people, too. That picture you showed after World War I and how many people were gathered, and then you look at these old photos from a couple decades prior. It's like, how many people were there at the time? Be interesting to know.
I think this thing was pretty big because there's a lot of buildings on the other side here, on the other side of this cove, right? So your downtown basically starts here and kind of winds slightly around, and then you have commercial and industrial along the waterfront here and here, and residential as you move further up the hill, and kind of the same thing along here, residential up in here, and businesses and so on along here. But I just find it odd that the fire is able to leap over and not harm some buildings, but then destroy others. And some of them are made out of the same materials, and one's fine, the other isn't. Wooden structures are okay, but stone structures destroyed. Just very weird. And again, this sloping street that they built a retaining wall and just put a fence here. Remnants of something here too. Yeah, just really strange.
Oh yeah, look at that. That's devastation.
You can see the scorching here and here.
Yeah. Rubble though in the foreground. See all
the rubble? All this rubble here, here, all along here.
Same old story. Maybe that was the World War. Maybe that was the World War that they always give homage to, as one we don't even know about, where they came in and devastated all these locations.
Yeah, and they attribute it to World War I or
World War II.
Or
the Boer War,
the Boer War, the Napoleonic War,
Spanish-American War.
Yeah, the War of 1812,
Crimean War. That's one as well. They're all in there. It's yeah.
So this is that St. John's. It's labeled church, but it's the St. John's Cathedral. So that's the one that we saw from the other side that had sort of slopes to it and so on, and the roof completely destroyed on this. But other than that, not looking damaged or scorched. So did they find this like this and say, oh, it was destroyed by the fire, but we're going to fix it up and put a roof on it? Because if it was wooden beam roof, once those beams get old enough, they're eventually, if they're wood, they are going to collapse. So even if you have a metallic roof or a slate tile roof, a stone roof, if those wooden beams collapse, then the entire roof would give way. That I can see, but I'm not seeing anything that has to do with fire. But this was labeled as, the Great Fire of 1892. So Who knows? But I'm not seeing any fire damage here at all. Not
No.
like in the previous where you mentioned all this rubble, right? And
Yeah.
the scorching.
Yeah.
Like this one's basically looks the same. It still has all of its walls and arches. It's just the roof that's come down. Same thing here, but there's no scorching. Not even coming out of these windows. Nothing.
Yeah, World War Zero, Marvelous Old World in the chat said World War Zero. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm starting to think.
Yeah.
The old world was the War of the Worlds, right? H.G. Wells. I did a video on the War of the Worlds as well, and I speculate that the 1800s was solidifying all that stuff. I think this is part of what we're seeing in a lot of these photographs.
Yeah.
The remnants. Look at this.
Yeah, you see you've got some brick here that's half buried underneath rubble of other brick. If you've got some buildings that are still standing, some that are completely dilapidated. This one looks like it's still standing, maybe. This one looks okay. The one in the back looks okay. But then right in the middle of all of these buildings, one is just completely demolished. I mean, a little bit here, obviously, in here, but I mean, why this one is completely leveled and these ones are okay, I'll never know.
Interesting.
So that's what I had for the Great St. John's Fire of 1892.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff for sure. All part of the same story that we see realm-wide.
All the pipe smoking parties were happening in these towns in the early days. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Come on over for a pipe smoking party.
Stamp out the sparks when the hay catches.
Jeez, crazy. So, we've been going here for roughly an hour and a half-ish. We say we take a little break. I've got a home movies of the early 1900s of St. John's. We could take a bit of a break, and then when we come back, I imagine you've got some wonderful stuff that you found in your research for St. John's.
Sure, yeah. Let's see the video, and then I'll get my file ready here.
All right, sounds good. All right, so we'll take a bit of a break here, and as mentioned, I've got a little video here to show. This is St. John's 1920. These are home movies, street scenes, and some of the architecture and infrastructure as well. So enjoy, and we'll be back in about 3.5 minutes. All right, we're back. So welcome back, everybody. And once again, just a reminder, if you haven't already, please make sure you like the video. If you're new and you like what you're seeing and hearing from myself and Old World Exploration, maybe consider subscribing. Links are in the description box below. Oh. See, you know what? Everybody in the household has got their opinion on the narrative. You can't even fool the dog. Come on.
She loves getting in on the conversation. She gets into a lot of my videos as well. That's Luna.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. She's got a friend over, so I'm watching a couple dogs right now.
Oh, nice. That's cool. I love dogs, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an animal lover in general, but for, household pets, you can't beat a dog, in my opinion. They're great.
And I'm just tying it into the old world research. You have to wonder too about our connection with these animals, the domestic animals, and how deep that goes into the old world as well. I would suspect.
Yeah, it would seem to me that the further back you go, generations, people had a lot more of. I mean, obviously there was more rural people, and there wasn't as many, supposedly by the narrative, as many people living in big cities. There was a lot more farmers and ranchers, but people just seemed to be not only more in touch with the earth and with nature, but yeah, there seemed to be a stronger, a better connection, a healthier connection between man and beast back in the day, sort of, Even my granddad talks differently about the animals that he had on the farm compared to today,
Yeah, I just came across something recently. Speaking of World War One, however many millions of horses died in World War One. I don't remember the number, but it was a ridiculously large number, in the millions. And I just thought to myself, that's one way to get rid of that old horse culture as well.
That's right, because I mean, there's some exceptions, but you hardly ever see horses in the city at all now. Here in Calgary, we still have, because our narrative is
Cowtown.
Cowtown, the cowboys and Indians. Look out now.
Yeah.
So I mean, we still have our police, the RCMP detachment based out of Calgary here. If they're in one of the city parks in the summer, sometimes they're on mountain bikes, but a lot of times they're still on horseback.
And good for
then,
the tourists.
Yep. And when they patrol the Stampede grounds during our annual rodeo, the second week in July every year here, they're on horseback. And then some cities still have horse-drawn, like handsome cabs, right? Like New York and Montreal and some other big cities. New Orleans, they still have the horse-drawn carriages where you can go to the older part of the city and kind of tour around. But other than that, it's hell. Like I can remember in the 70s when I was a kid still living back east, like, a farmer could still ride his horse into town from his farm, and hitch it up outside somewhere and go in and do what he needed to do and ride the horse back into town, kind of like the Amish still do in Pennsylvania, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe a part of our genetic memory too that has to be marginalized, right? The old horse relationship with the horses. All right, you want to see some photos? So want to see what I got?
Oh, absolutely. You want to see look what I got. Look what I got.
Yeah. Can I just press it here or share screen? I guess so, eh?
Yeah, you could just be able to do it with present there at the bottom, and you should be able to have full control over everything.
Here we go.
Then you got to click add to stream underneath where our icons are there underneath, where it says Old World Exploration, and it's kind of in gray there.
Yeah.
Click, if you hover over it, it should say add to stream. Did it work?
No.
Oh, okay. I'll click on it. Or maybe I have to. That's weird.
Yeah,
maybe because I'm hosting this one. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Another street scene. I'll try it. There'll be some double ups, so I'll move past a couple of these. But another one of those row houses scenes. Everything's nice and tightly packed. Right.
That looks like a dirt road too.
Yeah. A horse and buggy. Railway station. I like these. These jumped out at me. I've seen these in many other locations. These sort of curly fiddlehead-looking shaped lampposts.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
They're usually in front of a more significant building, whether it be a post office, a school, a train station, but
yeah.
rarely lining the streets, even the nicer residential neighborhoods, even like where the mansions were and stuff back in the day. You don't usually see that sort of, yeah.
No, it's like
Very
down a
interesting.
main thoroughfare, and you can see the gate along the ridge of the roof too. That what I call old world tech, some sort of gate. You see that in a lot of buildings
Yeah,
now.
sort of ether fencing, I think is what Stuffed Beagle calls it, but however you want to look
Nice.
at it, yeah.
Good. That's a good term. I like that. Yeah.
Notice this train station though, in such a small city with such a sparsely populated narrative, they
Mm.
can't just build a wooden. No, it's got to be a big stone train station with portals and arch windows. Like that's incredible. What a
Yeah.
beauty that is.
Older than we're told, I'm sure. I don't think I have a date of construction on it, but I'm sure it's early 1900s, as they'll tell us.
Well, I had trouble confirming a lot of the dates with the old photos I was looking at. Again, because Newfoundland joining Confederation in 1949, so maybe a good excuse to bury a lot of the dates and
Yeah.
sort of reconstruct a new narrative.
Need a little more time to get that story straight, eh? Maybe. All right. Waterfront. You see this here?
Yeah, it's pretty fancy.
Just
Fancy for
popping.
fishermen.
Yeah, right on the waterfront. Right on the waterfront. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-story buildings everywhere, making very little sense. Old too, right?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great shot. Oh, look at that bird's
Yeah.
eye. Nice.
Yeah. They got an interestingly shaped church in the middle of this lot here. But
Oh, yeah.
just looking, you can see it up here too.
I wonder where they took this photo from, by the way.
I don't. This says it's from 1920, but it doesn't say where. Maybe Signal Hill, or does it say? I don't know.
I don't know. It looks to me like maybe airplane or dirigible or hot air balloon or something.
Yeah.
Because they're pretty high up to be Signal Hill, I think.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'll keep moving along for you.
It's a nice shot, though. Wow. Pretty built out, as you can see, right?
Uh-huh. There's we'll see this building again. This is the old Irish Club. This is the cathedral. You can see only one tower of the cathedral on this side.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I have some interiors of those churches, so that'll be good. All right.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
1939. Yeah, 1939.
So now we've definitely have cobblestone there, but those are old. Those look really old.
They do, yeah, and really just feeling like old England, or
Yep. I even
really.
see if you back out of the photo slightly, yeah, right in the lower right-hand corner there, that circular looks like maybe a coal hole cover where they would load coal down the coal chutes, maybe.
Interesting. Very interesting. But looking well established, looking old.
You can see the sidewalk still slopes, so they had to
Here,
right there. Yeah, so
and
they had to the base of the building is on sort of different levels there, you can see.
Yeah, coming down to the street, that's old too. All this is really, really old. Worn down, very worn down. All right, I'll try to move along fairly quickly just to keep it moving. I like this one. This is the old the writing here kind of reminds me of money. I've seen some people make comparisons. These old bird's eyes.
Oh yes, yes.
Very official from the crown, right? Here we have all the
you got to have all your symbology and your official seals of this and that all over it. Yeah.
But even there, depicting, and I don't know when this is supposed to be, 1830. I don't know. Can you see that? That's pretty small.
The town and harbor of St. John's.
This is an early time period.
Yeah.
1831, maybe 51. It's old.
Yeah. Even if it's 1851, that's still really, really old.
Yeah, and you can see up on the hill, you still see the multi-story And remember, it's a drawing. And what I think they're doing with these is they're showing us some, but they're not showing us all. I think these are all
Right. And sometimes I think what they would do with the drawings is they would draw the building where it was because, and where it is now, but they would draw it slightly differently to fit the narrative. They would maybe draw it to look more like it was a wooden structure,
Mm-hmm.
except
But
for
it was
maybe the
actually brick.
church, but it was actually brick. And then later on in old photos, you see that it's brick or stone, and they say, well, they rebuilt it or they faced it in stone or brick, but originally it was just a wood frame building. And I
I've
think they
seen
use
that
to kind of fudge it a bit too sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I agree. And they put on what looks like horizontal siding, but it's actually a brick building. There's that. What do they call it? The colonial building? I can't remember. They're labeling it the Parliament here, but yeah, that's old. That's an old structure from even
Look at the
according to
side
this
of
photo.
it. Yeah, look right there. You could see down the side.
Yeah.
There's down the side. Yeah, right there. There's just full windows, but then in the front, half or quarter windows.
Right up to here.
And they've all the land is sort of piled up in front of the main entrance, and then it slopes down. It's so weird. Like you would just never build.
And the retaining wall here in behind, right? So you'd walk in behind, then walk up more steps. All right, let's see. Memorial University College, St. John's, Old World, Brickers, Columns.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got some pretty low windows on that one too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's run of the mill, right? So all of these are deeper than what they appear. Same as here. This is the museum. All right, you two, stop.
Oh, that's a museum.
Yeah, they're anatheum or a museum. Well, same thing. I don't know what the technical term for anatheum, but yeah, this is and it's got the gate tick.
So the St. John's, by their narrative, is fairly new at this point, but old enough to have a museum. Like, what would they in a newly building fledgling city in a new world country, right? Canada.
Yeah.
What would they have to put in a bloody museum?
Yeah, right. Maybe some royal stuff.
Like if this
weapons.
is 1880s, 1890s, yeah, I guess maybe it would have to all be
the biggest fish ever caught.
There you go.
Here's another angle of the same building here from the other side. Here you can see this going on.
Yeah, a big turret with a big dome on top. It's incredible.
Pretty ridiculous. Now, got a couple interiors of a church. I don't have the exterior in line with the photograph, but this is the Anglican Cathedral. That might be the one that we've seen burn. I'm not 100% sure, but this is the Anglican Cathedral. There.
Look at that. Do they have? Oh, okay. No, I was going to say, do they have two pipe organs in there? But no, it's one.
These two?
Those are just galleries, I think.
Here?
Yeah.
That's definitely pipe here.
Is it?
Here. Oh, yeah.
So what's the one more in the foreground on the left then? A pipe organ. So they have three pipe organs in this place?
I guess. These are the same thing as you would see here, pipes.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe it's all part of the same one. I don't know.
Maybe. This
is that church though, isn't it? Doesn't that window pattern look familiar? The one we saw with the roof blown off?
Yes. That's that same church. Yeah.
So then my question is, was the roof really blown off? Sometimes when I see that too, I'm like, really? They just threw all this together? Hard to trust a lot of that stuff, right?
Pretty incredible.
Maybe that was part of the roof that was rebuilt here.
Yeah, because a ship's builder could build a roof like that, just using, for me as a layman, just kind of looking at it and using logic. And I would imagine that, well, in fact, I know for a fact, actually, that I said earlier, there wasn't much industry going on in St. John's, but there was shipbuilding industry in St. John's.
Sure.
And
there'd have to be.
To build a cathedral roof out of wood timber for a shipbuilder might be fairly easy.
And this is actually, apart from this part, this is pretty standard construction.
Yes.
equal spacing, and then you just cover.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's
But
true.
the interiors are still so old world looking. It doesn't look like it belongs in Canada by the narrative, right?
No, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So another streetcar here, or street scene.
Yeah, that's a great shot.
Here we have another street scene, but they have the bank here. I can't remember if it's the Bank of Commerce or what it is, but
Probably the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
But again, the narrative for Newfoundland back then, much like it is to this very day, is that it's one of the poorest regions of the country. It's the poorest province. The people there only work half the year, and then they're on unemployment the other half of the year. So why would you need a bank that has big giant pillars and be so fancy for such a low income portion of the country?
Yeah. And if you were to build it nowadays, you would never build it like that, right? You'd need one story, and that's it.
Yeah, even if it was the main branch, that's
Yeah, for sure. This is Bank of Nova Scotia.
Look at that thing.
Mm.
Looks like there's tech on the top of that too. It's just barely faint. Yeah,
absolutely. And then the rail car lines you can see in here. Horse and buggy, streetcars.
But you can still see the street is sloping up to the right there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the windows get smaller and smaller.
Mm-hmm.
It goes from being a door to being windows.
Because
it's so it's
here,
so slanted.
Because you can't get in unless you're really short.
Unless you dug the damn thing out properly the first time.
That's right. Yeah. Maybe they didn't have the manpower to dig it out. So this is the basilica that we've seen quite a few times with the double towers.
Yes. That's the Catholic cathedral. Yeah.
Yeah, and I shared this one. This is from 1841, and the actual building itself comes from. Let's see if I can. Timeline of the history. Way back here. Oh, St. John's. Oh no, even further. Oh, maybe not. I thought it went back further in time. Some of these go way back in the historical narrative for how old they tell us they are. Sorry, I couldn't find that one.
So some of those buildings they say were built in the 1840s.
Yeah.
1850s, which is pretty far back in terms of the narrative for Canada, because again, Canada officially became a country in 1867. So, I mean, obviously there were people and colonies and structures here prior to that, but even an earlier date of 1840s on some of these is still suspect because they still look older than that. I mean, they look old in old photos.
Well, and then there's a part of this one too that's kind of showing us that trying to make it look a bit more like horizontal siding, less like stone and brick.
Yeah.
But
they try to make it look like wooden siding or something instead of stone.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem completely honest. Yeah, this is highest college. Sorry, Bishop Field College. They're calling it. There's that cathedral we were just looking at back there.
Look at the multiple tiered. From the ground is tier 1, and then you got to go up a few steps, tier 2, and then the third tier. But then you got a low window beside the main entrance where the stairs go up. And then you've got that funny gate coming off the street. But how are you gonna drive up that incline? Like they open that gate, one would assume, for horse and buggy to get onto.
Oh, here, yeah.
Right in the middle of the photo on the foreground, there's a gate there. Yeah,
you bet.
That's So you open the gate and you get your horse and buggies. Got to go up that steep incline. Good luck.
So yeah, it makes you think. This is lower down. All this is built up, isn't it? That's pretty obviously built up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even this door here, lower than the main door here.
Well, you see that layer that surrounds the sort of the first 4 or 5 feet of the building.
Here.
Yeah, where it looks like concrete or light stone and right under the brick, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like what is made to look like the foundation of the building.
Sure,
but the building itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Facaded.
but that it juts out from the brick.
Yeah.
So that is just stone facading or concrete facading put over the brick,
No.
I think, because it juts out from the building, and that would that would cause a lot of problems with water building up along that lip.
Sure. You need to flash that really well and
So
tuck it in
normally
behind
what
the
you
brick.
do is pour your foundation or build your stone foundation and then put your brick on top, and
Mm-hmm.
then your brick would either be flush with the foundation or your brick
Or a
would
little
even
bit further out.
protrude.
That's right.
Yeah, not the other
That's
way
right.
around generally.
No, you're right. Yeah. Brick ledge. Yeah. Look at the poles here too. Can you see this? They've been like scrubbed.
It looks, yes, yeah, there's
Been
something in the
That's been
foreground.
like airbrushed out or
Yeah,
something.
they scratched out the power pole or the telephone pole.
That one and that one too.
Yeah,
Interesting.
maybe they were prepping it for a postcard
Yeah.
or
Who knows?
something.
Maybe they thought it took away from them. Who knows? Yeah. That's all
Or
speculation for sure.
maybe at the time they didn't want anybody to know there was electricity there at that time. I mean,
Well,
who
that's possible
knows?
too, right? Like,
Who knows why they manipulated these photos?
what's the motivation, right? And yeah, here you can see too, like this steepness coming down right down to this building here.
Yes,
Like
like
there's your
that.
ladder.
Yeah, there's the oldie ladder lean,
Maybe a 4-story ladder.
and it
Crazy.
looks like the bottom 2 floors of that building are buried from the back.
Yeah, but open and down here.
But at street level, it goes down another 2 floors. Like, why would you build like that and then backfill all that? Obviously, you wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that thing with the cone-shaped dome in the background. Wow.
Here, you're gonna see this. Well, I think it's another church.
Yeah, that's
This
the other church. Yeah.
this might be a city hall too, which we're about to see. Actually, I'll show you right now. That
Wow.
this is their city hall, and you know what? Obscured. It was hard for me to find this.
Yes, I was looking for City Hall. I was looking for Carnegie Library.
Yeah.
And well, obviously, I couldn't find a City Hall photo.
Isn't it crazy? It's
Not an old one.
You think this would pop up? No, I couldn't find an old one. Oh no, I did. Sorry. Here, I'll just share that as well. There's an old one. I did find an old one. You'd think it would just pop up as like, look at St. John. Wow, isn't that amazing?
But yeah, this would be one of their showcase buildings, you'd think, because look how beautiful it is. Look how large it is.
They don't want us to see this.
Look at it's got 4 clock faces on it.
Mm-hmm. Like
well, I'm assuming
the nodes. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. Yeah, symmetry.
Looking very inspired by Parliament buildings.
Yeah, that's the Richardsonian Romanesque type style too.
There you go. Yeah. But I mean, look at the right-hand side of that building on the street. I mean, that's a mud flutter. You can even see that in
the windows disappear here.
You can even see that in the modern photo too, where they've put stairs and a paved road.
Rubble here too. Lots of rubble down the side.
And look how far it goes down underneath the main arched entrance on the front too.
Yeah.
So there's a door under there.
Let's jump back and forth. Let's see. Okay, modern day.
See?
Yeah. Is it at the same level? Let's have a look.
It looks like it goes higher in the older photo. It looks like they dug it out a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Leveled that off probably, that back there.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because this was just absurd.
Yes, that was too severe of a slope.
Yeah.
So they went up a slope, then leveled it, then went up another slope.
Yeah. That does not fit for this location, the City Hall of St. John's.
No, the City Hall should be maybe a 2-story wood frame building the size of a house. Like 1,000 square foot house, maybe.
Yeah.
Is what you would think by their narrative. That's what it would be. Maybe it would have a wooden tower with a clock, sure. But it wouldn't have 4 clocks with a tower made out of stone.
And then how many stories? Yeah. And the tower and the dome.
That's a beauty. Oh, that is a beauty.
It really is. Yeah. This is from the backside.
Yeah. Look at that.
We were just down there looking up. I know it's grainy, but you look how much higher it is here, actually. This street entrance comes in at this level.
Yes.
Which is just above this band here.
Yes.
So the street level. Yeah.
2, 3. So at the back of it comes up on the 4th floor is the main floor.
Like right here, I think, right?
Yes.
That's what, Or is it? Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy. What a building. Hmm.
Unbelievable. It's a beautiful building.
And like I said, obscured from the search results. It really was. I didn't find out about it until I was deep into my search on St. John's.
Huh.
Isn't that interesting? Like, you think this would be number one, right? Here, check it out. Check it out. This is what we have to offer.
It's almost like a guy needs to do a Google drop and then do screenshots to find a lot of these because they're just not, no matter how
Yeah, that's
specific
right.
you are in the search engine,
You're right. You're
for
right.
some reason they just don't come up.
I started doing that, the reverse image search if I find one, and then you find more links. Yeah, interesting. There's that colonial one again from the 60s, it looks like, maybe 70s.
No, that's late 50s, early 60s. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But looking really old though, still. Like
Sure.
the stone on it looks stained and dark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that
So
gold up on the top of what looks like two chimneys there with the, is that gold? What is that?
I can't tell. Maybe it's lighter colored brick. Not sure.
Huh.
Yeah. Let's check out a few more. Crosby Hotel. There's the
Yes.
stonework in the foreground.
That's that dead end street that turns into stairs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No shortage of this type of building. This is the old customs house, pre 1892. We're told by the photograph.
Wow.
Old customs house.
Yeah, and that's a mud flutter too. Looks like.
What the heck is this?
I don't even know.
Receiver of some sort, or
I know that St. John's was a major communication hub in the Victorian era for telegraph and all that stuff.
yeah.
And it's tied in. Newfoundland's tied in with the whole Titanic narrative, the sinking and all that narrative, right?
Okay.
Newfoundland's actually also very closely tied in with 9/11 and Operation Yellow Ribbon, where they had to reroute something like 300 plus flights into Gander, Labrador, which is Newfoundland, technically, essentially, because there was all flights were grounded in the U.S. and they weren't able to land, right? So
yeah, I do recall that. Yeah.
Gander, I think, had a population of 10,000, and there was something like 5,000 people got rerouted to Gander. So Newfoundland, for some reason, it's sort of in both narratives, in the old world with the telegraph communications and in the new world with the air travel, for some reason, is deeply involved in a lot of the crazy narratives and a lot of the more modern resets like 9/11 and so forth.
Interesting. So it's a nodal point maybe on the energetics of the overall energetics of the realm, I guess you could say.
Could be.
Prince of Wales United Church College. Again, modern. Look here. We have this story down here, and we have.
That's a pretty big building for a college, again, in St. John's, where, again, the narrative is they're poor as hell, and it's pretty much nothing but fishermen out there.
And they're building this type of stuff, and it's
like a lot of the fishermen's sons and daughters going to college, and then when they graduate from college, going back to being fishermen again, because then obviously you wouldn't need the college unless you're getting a degree in I don't know what, something to do with agricultural studies or ocean currents, and maybe become a marine biologist and then just go back to go fishing. I don't get it.
Who knows? Yeah. Street scene in the winter.
Yeah, see, look at all the snow, and then everything's all mucky and gross.
Looks rough.
A lot of times you see that it's skis or sleds instead of wagon wheels, right?
Yeah, on the horses, yeah. On the another, I think you might have shown this one too, or something similar. That skyline and the
similar, but this one's nice because you see a couple of the houses there. Like that one in the foreground is pretty nice.
Right here, yeah. It's not a fisherman's hut.
No,
shack.
No, that's a beautiful sort of maybe a side-by-side converted, but probably an old world estate home that when the founders came along and fixed it up, they split it into two-family, sort of what today we call a duplex. But the one
Yeah.
next to it, to the right, you can see that it slopes down where from the sidewalk level, it
Yeah.
slopes down, and then they've put a funny side door there that's lower than the sidewalk.
Here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That's interesting.
And then in the background, again, all built up, even on the hillsides where it's all rocky and hard to build. There's big buildings up there.
Looking too much like a metropolis, like for what we're supposed to believe this place was size-wise. Looking way too built out and too old.
Again, I have to reiterate, to me, in these old photos, it looks like it's way more than 50,000 people lived here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another street scene. Another church. That's not one of the ones we've looked at, I don't think.
No, but the big, huge, pointy spire.
Yeah, and the rock wall here.
Yeah, and again, that building across the street from the church, you can see the top of the roof again has that ether fencing.
Yeah. We're going to see that again. I think that's the Irish Society, Irish Club. I got a little blurb on that when I get to it.
Yeah, there's a huge Irish presence, obviously, in Newfoundland.
Yeah, yeah. The Irish Club, they might call it. I'm not sure. This is that Bank of Nova Scotia again.
Wow, yeah.
But this is what's across the street from it.
Just not what you would expect to see on some rocky outcrop on the east of Canada. You expect to see this in Prague or something, or maybe not as grand as Prague, but maybe somewhere in Ireland or England or
sure, yeah, England,
Belgium, maybe, or something.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. This is strange too. Sort of the landscape of the area. I thought that was interesting.
Like they just had to blast through that rock just to put a freaking walking path.
Yeah.
So imagine building these 5- and 6-story stone structures and amongst all these rock.
And basements, putting basements in them.
Yeah, good luck. A lot of these places don't have basements. At least the houses do. I mean, we saw in some of my earlier photos, some of them are built on stilts, wooden stilts. Look at that thing that looks like it belongs in India.
Yeah, Littledale. Oh, maybe this isn't. It's still labeled as St. John's. I don't know if this is out on the outskirts or what, but I thought it was a significant enough structure to throw in there.
That's those domes. That's a beauty. Wow. Yeah, I've never seen that one before.
Yeah, and you can see here, get a circular, little bit of that going on.
I think that's that one that we looked at in my pictures where the
three
buildings joined together, maybe?
Yeah, that's possible.
Where two are brick and one stone, maybe?
And that picture was from the other side, maybe.
Could be, yeah.
All right.
Oh, there's a nice streetcar shot.
Yeah, right. A different, interesting shape too. This one looking old as well. This looking.
Yeah, that looks different than the car I showed in my photos. Yeah, different style of car.
Rounded top, yeah. Interesting looking.
Yeah. Rollins Cross, St. John's.
Yeah, Rollins Cross. I remember actually saw a music band called Rollins Cross came here many years ago now, probably 30 years ago, Newfoundland.
Okay.
Celtic band, yeah. So that must be what they named it after, is this location in St. John's.
Yeah, I have to say that in terms of modern pop culture, St. John's has actually had quite a few traditional Irish/maritime sounding bands that have gotten success nationwide and even some success in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Bands like Great Big Sea and whatnot.
Sure, yeah. Rich musical culture there for sure.
Yes, yeah.
Would love to visit. I would love to visit. Yeah.
I've been to Newfoundland a couple of times. My dad's best friend was a Newfie back when we lived in Montreal, and I've been there a couple of times as a kid.
Yeah.
Not since I moved here to Alberta in 1980, but I remember it being just beautiful and green and kind of small but friendly, and
Yeah.
I wish I knew then what I know now in terms of the structures and look at it with a more wide eye, right? But
sure, yeah. This is the Gower Street United Church. So this is the one we saw, I think, looking down from the one I said that we'd see a bit later. With that
yes. Dome. And you can see the big arch windows that are semi-buried, and then the street slopes down.
Way down, actually, doesn't it? Come in a hurry. Yeah. Interesting. I'll skip that one. So this is going back to the inside of the John the Baptist Church. A little bit all over the place, but it really struck me. The ceiling really struck me. It really kind of blew me away.
That's incredible. I mean, that is some old world
Yeah.
craftsmanship. I mean, they don't bother to do that. Even in the Victorian era, when they were all super fancy and everything looked like the top of a wedding cake, even then they wouldn't have bothered to this extent inside there. I mean, that is.
They had some skilled fishermen though. In the winters, they would come in there and they would decorate the ceilings of the churches.
Sure, yeah. You know, it's not much difference between some fine finishing paint and carpentry work and throwing a giant net into the Atlantic Ocean.
It's all the same, really. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Not to say that fishermen are dumb people. They're absolutely not. It takes a
No.
special type of skill and not a book smarts, but street smarts in the sense of being able to know the sea and have a familiarity with the skill set and what's involved with navigating the oceans and being able to fish. And this is commercial levels fishery we're talking about here, not just standing on the banks and throwing your bobber in with a hook and a worm on the end.
Although I do enjoy that as well.
Oh, that's very peaceful.
Yeah.
But commercial fishing off the in the Atlantic Ocean, a couple hundred miles in the Grand Banks,
Serious
is not
business.
exactly a walk in the park.
Serious business, I know. Yeah, very dangerous. King's Bridge, they call this. King's
My
Bridge.
goodness.
Yeah, residences. I think has that gate. The gate again. What did you call it again? What does Beeks call it? Tech.
The
ether gates.
Ether fencing.
Ether fencing. Yeah, definitely having some of that there. This was very obscure. I had to dig pretty deep for this one. Not a great photo, and neither is the next one of it. And I'm sure this has been altered. This is the old Majestic Theater. Here's a shot from the other side. You can kind of look at this. Look how hideous that is.
They put a billboard right in front of that freaking dome.
That speaks volumes. It speaks volumes, doesn't it? Doesn't that say it all right there?
Yeah. Whatever we have to plaster on this billboard is way more important for your eyeballs than this beautiful old world architecture. No, we don't want your brain and your soul to be stimulated by that lovely dome. No, we're going to put an advertising there for, I don't know, Ivory soap or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah. Majestic Theater. No, nothing from the interior, and long gone, obviously, but yeah.
Looks like it was a pretty large building, though.
Yeah, right. Memorial University here.
It looks in shambles.
Doesn't it? Doesn't look new. It doesn't look anywhere near new.
Now, even if they tried to say this is construction photo, then I would still question it because the stone on the building is already showing like dirt and aging and blackening in some spots.
Yeah. Is this a trench even? Are they digging out down here? This looks like an entrance. And, yeah.
It looks like it, yeah.
Windows are buried here.
Yeah, there's just rubble and mud and muck and dirt everywhere around that thing.
Memorial University College. Okay.
Looks pretty shabby, unfortunately.
Yeah. Methodist College.
Wow.
Almost a drawing, but I think it's a photo. I can't.
It looks like an old photo, yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing, again, by their narrative, such a small city where they're pretty much the majority of that province, or the city anyways, is focused around the fishing industry, but there's so many churches and colleges or religious colleges like Catholic College, Methodist College.
Yeah,
but I think when they're using the term college, I know back in the day, even Canada, when they used the term college, they meant it as more
place to live.
No, it was like a sort of, I guess, like a private school or like like you could go to a regular high school or
like a boarding school.
Yeah, sort of the American private school model. But they were called colleges, not that they were university level. It was so that's confusing for the narrative.
I've heard that as well. Queen's College and things like that in Kingston. Yeah. Which is pretty prestigious.
Because there's a couple of old world schools here in Calgary that are now called such and such high school, but used to be called college. Like the one of the ones I looked at last summer and did a boots on the ground was the Central Memorial High School, which used to be called Central College.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, you showed that one as well. So we're getting some double ups here.
Yeah, the post office.
Saw
Oh
that
wow,
one.
look at that.
I think you showed this one as well.
No, I
No?
don't think I
Oh,
showed
okay.
that one.
Okay.
Wow.
This might be that building. We're getting to it. It's near the end. Here, actually, I'll jump to it right now. There it is. This is St. Patrick's Hall, built in 1806, we are told.
What?
Yeah.
Holy smokes, that's old.
Quite grainy, right? They have a bit of a write-up, too. I'm going to pull it up. Where is it? Oh, it's another one.
See, that was one of the hurdles that I was encountering looking for old photos, is that, by the narrative of this being Canada and perhaps North America's oldest city, there was a lack of really, really old photos of really, really old buildings. Like, I didn't find a lot of photos taken in the 1850s, 1860s, even 70s. It was mostly 1880s onward.
Yeah. And that's the resetting, right? That's why we get
Yeah,
into that.
because we know photography was around in the 1840s, 1850s.
Mm-hmm. This is the Benevolent Irish Society. Here we have a little write-up. Early 19th century Newfoundland, most active and influential fraternal organizations was a Benevolent Irish Society. I love the name Benevolent.
Yes. They got to tell
Just in
people.
case you weren't sure.
Yeah, they got to make sure that that that's fine. We're benevolent.
Yeah. So
Thanks, Nats. Take care, Nats.
Bit of a secret society connection there too, and then also I'll just bring this. I didn't find this, but this is on the Wikipedia right up, the Masonic Temple. Let's see if I can get a bigger. They do have one in St. John's. Here's their Masonic Temple.
Wow. Yeah. Again, that funny low door with a bunch of low windows. But that door was probably a window and they punched it out and put a door in. Yeah, that one.
Because that would be symmetrical with what's going on above.
Yeah.
Funny how I didn't find this in my search as well. Interesting.
Yeah, neither did I. And I purposely looked for Freemasons' presence in St. John's because I figured, being the capital city of Newfoundland.
Yeah. Looking pretty run down here.
It's looking pretty rough. Yeah. Well, that's like the Masonic Hall here in Calgary that I also looked at last summer and did boots on the ground. There was a bunch of windows that were bricked in or boarded up.
Yeah. It's like, well, the Masons, they've seen better days, I guess, the Masonic organizations. A few more shots of that church we've seen several times.
Look at the exaggeration of how steep that incline on that street is.
Absolutely.
And you're telling me that there wasn't some kind of catastrophic mud flood?
Right. This looks old too. You could say that if this was in England, somewhere in wherever Shire in England, and they told you it was 1600s, you have no trouble believing that.
Yeah. If they told you that was in Chestingtonshire, somewhere, then you'd be like, yeah, okay, built in 1672, sure, okay, why not?
Yeah.
But no, St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada.
Here's another
broke ass fishermen.
And it's not just one church. Here's another one, St. Patrick's.
With the metal roof, and oh man, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Still has some of the tech on the tippy point of the roof there, the tippy top.
Yeah.
And then tech on the top of and on top of the spire too.
Mm-hmm.
And on each one of those little pergolas too. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And then this is the one I showed you. It was very red brick looking.
Yeah, that's probably the most beautiful building in the city.
This is the Methodist Church. Yeah, Gower Street. 1902, this is dated to this photograph.
What a magnificent structure.
All right. Spectacular. All right. What's that doing there at that time period? Amazing.
Wow.
All right, I'm getting to the end of my file. I got a few more I'll just throw out. So we saw this one. This is the Benevolent Irish from 1806. Here we have, I call it sulkies, but again, columns, right? Built into there. Mud flood action going on there.
Oh, absolutely. Entrance on the corner of the building.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
They don't do that anymore. I mean, that seemed to have been an old world thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not even Flatiron type buildings either. It doesn't even. It can be a perfectly square or rectangular building, but then they put the entrance on the corner like that.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to matter. Um, this is that big church we've seen so many times, Basilica of St. John the Baptist.
Yeah.
But what's this doing out front? Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
Weird.
It's a different, it looks like maybe a different type of stone.
Maybe some polymer. Like, I don't know if that's stone or if that's just shaped, right?
That's definitely a different material than the
Then here.
cathedral in the background or the basilica in the
Absolutely.
background.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's remnants of something older that was on that site previously, or maybe it was attached to this building somehow, or at one point in the past. It's hard to say. I'm just speculating, of course.
It
but
just seems like too much for the location that we've chosen to focus on here. This is post-fire as well. Water Street.
Yes.
But you see all this going on here.
That was one of their main roads, Water Street, I think, if I remember. If you're from anywhere in Newfoundland, by the way, in the chat, shout out and let us know what your experiences are, if some of these are still standing and so on. This is fascinating.
Yeah. I think that's the end of my file for Newfoundland, for St. John's.
Just amazing photos, just
right?
Incredible.
Just don't expect it from these places, you know.
Again, it just proves, it's almost like we're beating a dead horse in this research community at this point. That it almost just proves the point that I don't know.
I understand what you're saying.
It's hard to put into words, There's such a built-out city, even in the old photos, that and in 1950, the earliest we could find, the population of St. John's 50,000. But in photos way prior to that, it looks like it could hold 150,000.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of the time too in my research, I think, am I beating a dead horse? It's like, to me it's obvious, and to me it's everywhere. But I think the point is, it's not that way to everybody. Like people that are just picking up on this research, I'm getting comments on some of my videos now too, and you can tell it's fairly new to them, and that they're just gaining eyes for this realization, right? So for us, we're getting a bit seasoned with it, right? It's starting to be like, okay, this is looking the same everywhere I look. Why would I do another city? Because it's just going to look like the last one. But
with that being said, though, there's always something new and surprising to learn, not only in the official narrative, where you're like, oh, that's absolutely ridiculous, or what have you, but also just the stuff that you uncover that is a lot more plausible in terms of, photos and stuff, where you say, okay, like this is definitely older. That's definitely mud flood. I mean, you could just tell. And so it's amazing still how we're still finding a lot of these cities that you kind of go in expecting to see a lot of the same old thing that you see everywhere across the realm. But there's always still a few surprises, even for people like you and I that have our own channels and kind of really dig into this stuff a lot more than perhaps other people in the community do, where they're, they watch a lot of the content and they do maybe a bit of research on their own, but they don't necessarily go all in with channels and that sort of thing. But even like you said, for quote unquote seasoned vets, there's still stuff that just knocks you for a loop. I'm like, how can a few guys get together and build a cathedral like that, in such a difficult place like St. John's, with harsh winters and harsh topography? And it's no wonder now that people say, oh, yeah, it reminds me of San Francisco, because there was a lot of stuff that was very reminiscent of San Francisco, with the extremely steep streets, and then the buildings where it's multiple floors and multiple doors going up the street, because it's such a slope, where on the main street, your main door is on street level, and then as you go up the side street that goes up beside the building, then your next door is on the second floor, then the third floor, then the fourth floor.
Yeah. And I think we're almost like we're mapping out the old world as we move from location to location, and then drawing the correlations. We're also learning a lot of the planted history, and we're sort of unearthing that as we go along from location to location. So it's a really never ending. I don't think there's going to be any end to the research. You could go on forever.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the things that you and I specifically wanted to do when kicking off this show, the Canuckleheads show,
Hmm.
was focusing on Canada because, yeah, you can look at Montreal and Quebec City and Toronto and Vancouver, like a lot of the big major cities that do have a long history.
Uh-huh.
But for us, learning about our own country when it comes to some of the smaller cities that don't quite have as much of a loud voice in the narrative, like St. John's or Winnipeg or hell, like Moose Jaw or
Hmm.
wherever,
Hmm.
right? We can still learn and then share as we're learning in real time. And it's just incredible. And that's the great thing about the Knuckleheads is that, yeah, we kind of focused on Canada, sure, because yeah, you can look at New York and Chicago, but that's a lot more familiar to people out there than places like Edmonton or, Regina,
Yeah,
for
or
example.
St. John's even. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And what it's showing is that this is everywhere. This is these lines that we have drawn on our maps in 2023. A lot of those lines were drawn after the World Wars, right? So a lot of these regional differences or national differences even have been, you know, implanted upon us by the inheritors, I would say. And what we were looking at is a realm-wide civilization that had very similar infrastructure. Regional differences that were celebrated, I think, but um, a realm-wide civilization
Yeah, I
that's
think the
everywhere.
sort of the bones of the structures were similar. And then yeah, I think there was some regional flair and influences that so you'd see almost identical structures, let's say in Edmonton, Alberta, as you would see in, I don't know, Dusseldorf, for example.
Mm.
But then in Dusseldorf, they put their own regional flair in with some of the details and maybe the statues and the carvings and the medallions and stuff like that. Whereas, in Edmonton, it would have the regional influences of the people there. And then, of
Mm.
course, when you have the controllers coming in and reclaiming a lot of these old world buildings, throughout different time periods in the sort of more immediate timeline, in the last, let's say, 200 years, they're purposely doing things to try to make them look different. But again, you just look up the lady's skirt and you see the bare bones is so similar all over the world. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, yeah, sure, a smaller city like Edmonton or St. John's, the building might look exactly the same as something in Paris, but just on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
But other than that, the meat and potatoes are the same.
Yeah, and then the
It's just the
infrastructure.
dressing that's maybe a little different.
Yeah, the streetcars, like the steampunk. What we consider steampunk as a like a fiction, I guess in our modern day, steampunk might be just a shadow of a memory of a past civilization. You
Yeah.
know, and the Harry Potter thing, or a lot of that, the steam trains and all these things that we consider fiction have been fictionalized for us. Were actually the realm-wide civilization that we were once a part of.
And then some of that old world tech was allowed to be romanticized so it can be brought into the modern narrative, like steam trains, for
Hmm.
example.
Hmm.
Whereas some of the other older technology that ran on the same thing, steam powered, is not romanticized and sort of used maybe in theme parks or put into use. Like there's still steam locomotives being used in theme parks or in like in some railway museums still have functioning steam engines,
Hmm.
but you don't see a lot of steam shovels being romanticized or steam powered tractors like pre-combustion engine, Henry Ford, for example. Pre-gasoline, there were steam powered vehicles, trucks and tractors and that sort of thing, in
Hmm.
the 1880s and 1870s. But those, for some reason, have not been romanticized and allowed to be brought into the modern narrative, whereas locomotive trains are.
Yeah.
So how much has been lost because some of it was deemed okay to be romanticized or brought into pop culture through steampunk? What are we not aware of? What has been lost?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yeah, and we know the dirigibles and the air travel. I think any of us in this research have a good grasp that there was much more going on in that department than we've been led on to believe.
Sure, there
And,
were large dirigibles and flying machines, but then there were also smaller personal
mm,
ones that, just shade tree mechanics or people that were just mechanically inclined were
mm-hmm,
building and flying these things around. And we've seen photos of them. Not the goofy Wright brothers right around that time where people were, putting wings on bicycles and taking jumps off of wooden ramps and crashing. But,
mm-hmm,
there were personal flying devices on smaller scales. And then you had, the big, large, commercial traveling
mm-hmm.
vehicles, the blimps and the zeppelins and that kind of stuff.
I think it's all tied in with the way that what we use for travel, like the petrochemical takeover by the whole Rockefeller types and the robber barons and all that type. The robber barons literally were the robber barons. Like, it's not an endearing term, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And they all worked in conjunction with one another. Like, the railway industry wouldn't have been able to be as successful as it was had it not been for the steel industry.
Mm-hmm.
And neither industry would have been as successful if it wasn't for the oil industry, and so on and so forth. And they all kind of, one hand washes the other when it comes to those robber barons.
Yeah, yeah.
And getting back to the blimp and dirigible thing for a second too, it wasn't until maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago or so that I realized that I used to think that blimps were like hot air balloons, where the bag, if you will, or the main body, the
It was just
balloon
full of air.
portion was
Yeah.
just full of air or chemicals or whatever. And just what was attached to the bottom was what the people sat in. And it would
Mm-hmm.
only hold 20, maybe 30 people,
Mm-hmm.
like you saw in Indiana Jones. But in actual fact, you would sit inside the big mass,
Mm-hmm.
and the parts that were attached to the bottom of it were how it was operated. So that's where you had your pilot, your co-pilot, your navigator,
Mm-hmm.
yada yada yada, and everything was actually contained within the blimp portion of the Zeppelin, if you will. And up
Well,
until
so they
recently, I
flipped it
didn't
around.
realize.
They flipped it around on us, right? Because it falls in line with the whole story of it being not a very reliable mode of transportation. Right? You could only transport several people if that's how many people you could fit in that little portion of the blimp.
Yeah, the little gondola attached to the bottom, sort of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and but meanwhile, these things could, transport hundreds of people, and they always say, oh, it was a slow method of transportation. It was a little slower, but it was faster than taking an ocean liner.
Also, it would be leisurely. It would be enjoyable,
Yeah,
right?
people got dressed up. It was like a big thing to get into an airship and fly to New York. It was like we see people got dressed up to even just to go to the silent movies or to go to the theater or to the opera or to
Mm-hmm.
church.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're right. It was a luxury liner in the sky,
I've
right?
seen them lavishly decorated. Some of them, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, just as lavishly decorated as a lot of the cruise ships and ocean liners from back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Oh, the
like
ocean liners, the steam,
t-
yeah.
your tea service was served in the dirigibles, and it was in china and sterling silver, and it would have been just as fancy as any ocean liner back in the same time period.
It makes me think about the whole steam engine too. The steam engine, I think, is also an overhauling, like a repurposing of old technology. That what do we use now for steam engines? Coal, like a really high heat, right, to boil the water to get the
Yeah,
steam.
yeah, the steam. Yeah, you got to get your boiler up to a certain temperature to build up the steam, and then that's pressurized and then
Mm-hmm.
passed through, your various modes,
Mm-hmm.
generally pipe. But yeah,
Yeah.
but I
So
think it's been that I think steam is an old world tech that they tried their best to sort of refurbish and get working again, but it's not as efficient, I don't think, as it was in its glory days in the old world. I think steam technology was much more efficient. It didn't require you to burn massive amounts of wood or coal to get the boilers going. I think it was tied into some of the tech that we see on the buildings where
For
you're
sure.
gathering energy.
Cleaner.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Looks like I have to go purchase a canoe.
Why wouldn't you want to buy a canoe? It's spring in the Rockies.
I
This is
know.
the perfect time to get a canoe. Plus, it'll go nicely with your new pop-up trailer.
That's right. It's got the rack on there, so we're going to stick it on there and take it out into the remote regions and take in some of that nature.
That's one of the things that's glorious about being a Canadian. We're kind of spoiled up here in the Great White North, eh? Is that there's just we have massive expanses of basically unspoiled, untouched nature, whether it's mountains or whether it's lakes or rolling hills and prairies, whether it's the forests or whether it's over on the east with the bluffs and cliffs and fjords and bays and alcoves and the beautiful ocean.
Yeah.
It's just an incredible place that we live in here. We kind of take it for granted as Canadians sometimes, but especially where you and I are right in the Rockies here, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I don't blame you. Get on your way there, get yourself a canoe.
I got a beat on one on the marketplace here, so I got somebody contacting me to come check it out. So I want to grab it before someone else does.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
You know how that can be, right?
Oh, I hear you. Well, as always, great chatting with you. Thanks again for getting this thing together. Always a pleasure, my friend. And thanks to everybody in the chat for joining. Of course, we'll see you for another episode of the Canuckleheads. Episode 3 will be coming up next month. Not sure what we'll do yet. We'll figure it out and we'll get to it.
I'm going to throw out a suggestion, Hamilton. I don't know what your take on that would be, but I want to look deeper into that location. So,
yeah,
well, we can have a discussion.
Hamilton's kind of always overlooked in that region, isn't it? It takes a backseat to Toronto and other areas. So yeah, Hamilton. Why not?
Okay. We'll have a chat about it, but I'd be happy to look into Hamilton.
Yeah. She sounds like a good one there, bud. Oh, for sure, eh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, have yourself a good one. Oh, thanks again. Appreciate it,
Frankie.
as always.
Pleasure.
All right, everybody. Take care. Thanks for joining us here in the chat. And again, in the description below on both here at New West Reset and over at Old World Exploration, links in the chat. Appreciate all of your support, everybody. And we'll see you again for another one soon. All right. Take care, everyone. Cheers.